Welcome back, guys. We have another terrific author on the show today, an incredible content creator. He is the author of The Unplugged Alpha. He's also the host of an incredible YouTube channel you guys should check out called Entrepreneurs in Cars. He's got 600,000 subscribers. You can check out everything he does on richcooper.ca. Please welcome Rich Cooper to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me, brother.
For sure, man. Your setup is awesome, by the way. I've had several people comment about this. You use that low resolution camera in there, and I see sometimes you'll sit down and then stand up. I watched the camera follow you while you stood up. How do you have that? Where do you get the idea to get this set up?
I just like to stand up kind of halfway through my live shows, especially when I do the Q&A. I tend to think better and, roll through the ideas a lot quicker. So it's just easier for me to stand up. Plus, you're sitting on your ass all day long. Who wants to do that for a living?
For sure. Beautiful, beautiful. Can you talk about the origin here? So, I went back and watched some of your videos from like 5 years ago. So you start off with the idea of, first off, what's the ethos for entrepreneurs in cars? Because you did that before we got to the Unplugged Alpha. Where did that come from?
Yeah, that was that kind of came from a mastermind event that I was at, if I'm being honest. And I was sitting at these tables with guys like Dave Rasberry and a few other like big time bloggers. And there was one guy that was running this YouTube channel called Luxy Hair. Alex Icon was his name, and he ran this hair extension thing, with his wife on YouTube. And I've always liked cars and hanging out with entrepreneurs and shooting the shit with them, sort of thing. So I kind of created this notion in my head that if I mash up entrepreneurship with cars, kind of like TED Talks meets Top Gear, I'd kind of have something to roll with. And that was 2014. And I did a bunch of videos on my channel that are still there, where I interviewed friends in their success rides, and we kind of dove into what it took to get to where they got and all the obstacles. And the whole time I'm basically ripping the crap out of their cars. But I ran out of friends with cool cars real fast, so people were starting to ask other questions because I started to have a little bit of an audience then. Like, I remember one day one guy said something along the lines of, "You should talk about the kind of women not to date." And I thought, that's interesting, because I got a lot of experience there, so I'll dispense that advice. And that one blew up. That one got a ton of views. So I just kind of leaned into that a little bit more and made my wounds my work, if you will.
Yeah. Can you talk about that? So subsequently, you go through some awakening thing that happens in your relationships. I believe something to do with a single mother that you were dating. Is this happening at the same time while you're doing Entrepreneurs in Cars, or is this before? How does that what's the timeline for that?
It was kind of en route, if I'm being honest. So there was three big things that happened in my life that really red pilled me, right? So the first thing was the whole divorce situation, which was long before I got to YouTube. I just figured, hey, if it doesn't work out, you check out, you untie the knot, you set up a fair custody plan, and everything's tickety boo. But it didn't work out that way. So that's when family law kind of slapped me in the face with a big fat red pill. And then about a year or two after that, I started dealing with policymakers and legislators on a bill here in Canada called Bill 55, which basically threatened to completely destroy the industry that I was operating in my debt relief business in. And I spent about 2 years of my time, and the long and short of that was basically, they don't really care about people. They don't care about voters. They don't care about what's good for the consumer. They only care about what these credit card companies and these I mean, how can I put it? These large financial institutions, influence policies in such a way that it's like basically a moot point to even fight it. So that was another big red pilling moment for me as well. And then I got started on the YouTube channel, and then the next red pilling moment kind of happened about a year into the channel, when I got red pilled a third time by over ego investing into a relationship with a single mommy that I was with for about 3 years, and that fell apart the first year into the channel. That's kind of like around the same time people were starting asking me questions about relationships, and I started talking about some of the experiences that I had there too.
Yeah, I noticed your show, because I really love the discussion you had with Justin Waller about running a company, about how when to know when to hire and fire and things like that. So it's not just the channel had an origin in entrepreneurship, and you've actually run a business before we got into all the concepts about red pill. So in doing so, you also talked about Rollo, and Rollo and I've had several conversations about it. When I read, so I just full disclosure, I used to manage a strip club. So for me, that awakening happened probably when I was my early 20s. I just got out of college, and every day I would come back and I would hear my parents and my church and my television tell me one thing about how the world worked, and then I would go into the locker room at the strip club when I was a DJ, and I would see completely different things happen by women that at the time, I'm 22 years old. These are very attractive women to me. At the time, I don't know any better. And I'm watching these things happen. I'm like, something is not adding up, right? And after being exposed to that for 4 years, I was like, okay, this makes sense. When I finally read Rollo's book, which would have been like 10 years later, a lot of the things were very clear to me. And I was like, oh, this guy's writing it in a way that's very concise and makes sense. When you wrote the Unplugged Alpha, you talked about before how you kept things very simple. Where did a lot of that come from? Did it come from the one experience that you had, or you started coaching guys and it was an anecdotal experience from them?
Well, I mean, one thing I've noticed about people, but guys in particular, is guys like to complicate their life and to justify why they do it. Right. It's like, they'll run through this gauntlet of mental gymnastics of BS to convince themselves something is true. And then they'll defend that ego investment vehemently, just because they put so much time and years and financial resources into it. So I like to simplify things. Sometimes people argue, well, it's not just black and white, Rich, or it's not just that simple. But I find for the most part, on a balance of probabilities, yeah, it is.
Yeah, Ockham. You talk about Occam's razor. For those of you who don't understand, he's a 14th century monk named William of Ockham who came up with the idea that whenever you have two competing hypotheses, the one that requires the least number of assumptions is most likely the one that's correct. And you talk about
Correct.
that in the book a few times. And even though to some extent it may be heuristics, like for instance, I'll give you an example. I was, I'm seeing someone now, but before this, I was in a situation where I really was not interested in being in a relationship. And I read I believe 21 red flags that you had in there.
20 red flags.
Yeah,
Yeah.
20 red flags. And I remember thinking, man, these are a bit draconian. And then I thought, no, I don't want to be in a relationship. So these don't seem like red flags. Where did you come up with those red flags?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started getting a lot of emails and DMs from people when my channel really started to blow up and was getting a lot of traction, a ton of views. And it was like a daily thing. People were asking me questions about this, that, and the other thing. So I started this uh, offer to coach basically. And I would drop a link and say, sure, I'm happy to chat about it, book a call. So I've done about 600 calls on one platform, about another 400 or 500 on another platform, and I get call-ins like every week on my show. So I mean, you add those up, there's probably well over 2,000 people that I've talked to. And one of the things I noticed when I was writing my book was I wanted to try to keep it as simple and easy to digest as possible, because a lot of stuff out there is very complex. Like I
Yeah.
noticed you got David Buss's book over your shoulder with Evo Psych, and I love his stuff, and I've dove into all that, but I wanted to make it simple. And I think one of the things that you can do as a guy is if you paint a picture of what to avoid, then what you want to invite into your life becomes a lot clearer. Like if you just set aside like the danger, the landmines, the red flag sort of thing, then once you get those out of the way, then it's a lot easier to deal with women once you've vetted them in that sense.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm more of a red flag guy versus a green flag. Like a lot of people say, well, what are the green flags? And it's like, well, it's pretty much the opposite of the red flags. Like if she's a violent person, you want a chick that's not violent. If she sucks with money, you want a woman that's
Yeah.
great with money, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Have you read The Millionaire Next Door?
No, I
Terrific book.
haven't.
The most common car owned by millionaires was actually like a Ford F-150. Most millionaires had never bought a suit more than $500. But one of the things they talk about that was very common amongst millionaires is they were on their first marriage and their wife was actually more stingy with money than they were. It was very common practice that happened.
You want to hear something funny about the
Yeah.
Ford F-150? There's a survey done once on what kind of cars women like the most,
Yeah.
for guys to drive, and it was a black Ford F-150
Isn't that funny?
was top. Isn't that hilarious? It wasn't a BMW, it wasn't a Benz, it was a black Ford F-150.
I think Ford had done such a great job, especially I grew up in North Texas, in aligning their car with masculine behavior. If that makes any sense, right? I feel like
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
did about being a car that a workman would do, or somebody who could solve a problem would have a Ford F-150 with a gun rack in the back. You know what I'm saying, and maybe a winch
Yeah.
or something to that effect. The controversial statement, I don't know if you saw, so Rollo and I, we do a show every other Friday called Access Vegas. And so every week we've asked the girls the question about whether or not they believe in one of the statements that you have. One of my favorite quotes from you is women don't care about your struggles. They wait at the finish line and they fuck the winners. Can you talk about where you came up with that idea? And I'd love for your reaction, because we've had 7 girls on before just come with their reaction. Almost all of them agreed with that, actually. It was really interesting. Where did you come up with that quote?
Yeah, I mean, like women don't have a lot of patience for guys' struggles. Then you always hear the arguments, well, I've been with my husband for 10, 15 years and he had this struggle and that struggle and I never left him and I stuck with him. I'm like, okay, great. Right. But what do you look like? What does he look like? Did you have options? Did he fix the problem? Like there's a lot of outside factors that can contribute that may make that variable non-existent. But on a balance of probabilities, again, women just don't have time for guys that aren't doing something with their life, right? Oh, my boss was mean to me today. Like I remember talking to this, like I used to talk to women often, on dates about why their husband would, like why they would split up with their husband. Because when I got out of my divorce, I mean, I did what every other dork does and starts dating, women their own age, which are mostly divorced. And a lot of the stories I heard was, well, he just, he couldn't keep a job down, or he couldn't provide, or he wasn't, this guy was
We grew
depressed
apart.
all the time.
We
Yeah,
gr-
yeah, we
we
grew
grew
apart.
apart is my favorite one. It's like, no, he lost his
Yeah.
job, but we grew apart. Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of those stories, but I mean, the truth of the matter is that all boils down to that simple phase. Women don't care about your struggles. They do hang out at the finish line and they pick the winner. I mean, that's what they want. Pick them, fuck them, whatever you want to call it. That's generally what their modus operandi is. Let's go for the guy that has what I want.
So what I think is really interesting. So I used to work in, well, I still work in the financial community, mostly in stock options. So we deal with normal
Mhm.
distributions. And when you say a lot of the stuff, especially with the 20 red flags, there probably are some single mothers that you could be with. You talk about this before, but in the normal
Mhm.
distribution, the middle 68.27%, what you're saying is correct. As far as what you're saying about women don't care about your struggles, that's not 68.27%. That's 99.9%. I have found because this is the example I used. Let's go to Walmart. Let's look at the guys stocking the shelves at Walmart. He's struggling way fucking more than me, and none of you care. And when we had some girls in there, and they were like, "Well, I would care about my partner's struggles," and I'm like, "Yes, but he's your partner. That means he had to have at least enough attractiveness and enough, you build enough comfort, and you had enough value. He had enough value in your eyes for him to become your partner. In order for that to happen, you did not go through all the work he did to get his master's degree, start his first business, go through bankruptcy, second business, go through the divorce, so whatever horrible injury he had, whatever thing that happened like that, you didn't care about that. You were dating a finished product. And it's funny because we had all these girls come on, and Rollo and I were kind of expecting them to disagree, and none of them did, man. None of them did. It was really interesting.
Not very many women will disagree with that. I
Yeah.
mean, they might try to preserve like an image about themselves because they don't want to seem to be that way. But when you peel back the layers and women become honest, almost all women will agree with that statement. It's a very difficult one to fight.
Yeah. Men compete, women choose. I also like this one as well. I mean, it's really interesting. Like what we got into a discussion, and the reason why I talk about evolutionary psychology so much is because I like an evidence-based explanation of why men and women
100%.
are different. It doesn't mean that we're not equal. I mean, under the eyes of the law, we're equal. But actually, we'll get into the idea about family law. But when we talk about this concept of us being different, for some people, they have a serious problem with it. With evolutionary psychology, one of the things that I also found with Dr. Buss and Gad Saad and Steven Pinker or whoever is the reason why I feel this is the most testable model of psychology and it doesn't really blow up is because people on the right don't like the concept of evolution. People on the left don't like the concept of gender roles. And
Mm.
so we end up in this like middle ground where it's almost like Galileo telling the Pope that the earth goes around the sun, so they put him on house arrest. It feels a
Mhm.
little bit like that. And it's almost like a red pill truth that a lot of people, even conservative people, don't want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I got nothing to disagree on that
Yeah,
one, brother.
yeah, for sure. So here we go. So one thing I also wanted to point out is your short form content. We'll get into like you as a content creator. You
Mhm.
got 600,000 subscribers. Where did you notice the most explosion? Was it after the book came out, or was it, what were the things that helped you the most?
It depends on the platform. Like TikTok had a huge growth spurt for me in like 30 days. I got 100,000 followers, and after that, it kind of went a little slow with the algorithms. Um, the algorithms on the video platforms are an interesting thing. Sometimes they love you, sometimes they hate you, and some people tailor their content to sort of cater to it. I'm really not that guy. Like I don't need to do that. Like my life's good. I don't need the views. I don't need the money. I don't need the attention. So I kind of talk about and do things that I think matter the most to guys, which sometimes the algorithms like and sometimes they don't. But it's been a multi-year journey. I don't see any reason to give it up anytime soon. I still enjoy it. I was on a retreat last week and somebody said to me, like, when do you think you're going to stop doing this? Like, what's the end goal? And I just said, when I stop like what I'm doing, basically is,
Yeah.
when the end goal comes around, then I'll figure out, whatever the next thing is.
As a business owner, you did talk about the idea of passion. So Justin came on here, and we talk about fuck your feelings. I talk about frequently waste management open or waste management in the company. I'm like nobody's dream was to do to clean up other people's feces. Like that wasn't
Yeah.
someone's dream, but somebody became a billionaire because of that. And in your
Mhm.
your case, you did talk about having a passion behind what you were doing, but you had a debt company. Can you talk about that? Like at what level of competency and passion do you need?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that say fuck your passion sort of thing. And I don't know that I agree with that because running a business is hard. And if you
Yes.
want to get something off the ground, you're going to have to like it because you're going to get knocked down. You're going to have lawsuits. You're going to deal with all kinds of problems along the way. So, I mean, for me at the time when I was running the debt business, I was in the corporate world for about 10 years, got slapped around by, different leaders in the space, the president, the VP sort of thing. And it's like, I just got tired of trying to prove myself to people that I was lining their pockets with gold,
Mm.
and they just didn't really have a clue what was going on. So when I had the opportunity, when they let me go, they gave me a package basically. It was either, go and do all these other interviews, or people were calling me to come and work for them and basically do the exact same thing. And it's going to be another shade of shit. It's like either diarrhea or constipation. It's the same thing. It's still shit. I figured to myself, you know what? When I was a teenager, I used to love, setting things up for myself. I ran a mobile car washing business. I used to outsource newspaper deliveries to my friends. I used to do like bottle returns, shovel driveways in the wintertime here. So let's go back in entrepreneurship. And the biggest push for me was, you know what? I'm going to show these fuckers, basically,
Yeah.
was, the passion behind it. And I figured out a way to settle debt, preserve credit ratings, and do it faster and less expensive than what a competitor would offer, like a consumer proposal or bankruptcy here, the way they structured at the time. And that's how that business blew up, man. And it's like the passion behind it, I believe anyway, was probably the biggest contributor to the success.
You mentioned before one of the reasons why you had passion in that business was because you saw uh, credit agencies taking advantage of people, credit card companies taking advantage of people, and you were doing something to fix that problem.
100%. Yeah, because they didn't have any options. The only options was screw up your credit over a longer period of time and pay lots of money back that you really couldn't afford to pay. Those were really the only options.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because we had Richard Hart on here, and we also had, well, I haven't had him on yet, but Stephen Liao, who's the guy who has the term credit on Instagram. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah.
And one of the things Stephen Liao does is he markets specifically in this really wild fashion with shotguns jumping out of airplanes and sports cars with porn stars and strippers, because I think from his standpoint, he sees people who have messed up their credit as being like people who take risk, or like you said before, there's no excuse. You should know if I spend less than I make, then I should not be in debt, right?
Hmm.
And so he's looking for people who don't have that type of mindset, and he sells them a credit repair type of his program. So I think it's really interesting when you talk about that, because when you talk about people being in debt, it's I guess a function of lack of education. What do you think?
It's a basic math problem, dude. If you're
Yeah.
spending more than what you make, you're going to end up in debt at some point. And, everybody has this entitlement mindset today. Me, like I deserve it. Like when I was a kid, my granddad would go to Marks and Spencer in the UK. And if he wanted a sweater, you drop down 50p or whatever,
Right.
and you do that over 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. And then by the time you paid off the sweater, then you could take the sweater home and wear it. Now everything's based on credit. Now everything's like, oh, you're a victim, so you deserve this sort of reparation, or you deserve this, that, and the other thing. So it's just a mindset thing today. And people love spending. Like even marketing slogans with banks here. Like I'm not going to use the exact verbiage, but it's verbiage along the lines of you've got way more money than you think you have, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
so they're just convincing people left, right, and center to spend money, which is great for them because it's a highly profitable business model. Like I wish I was in that business.
Yeah, it is crazy. Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see like the predatory idea
It's
behind it.
nuts.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
kind of. Also, another thing that I thought was really interesting. So, my business, we're less than 2 years old, and we've already gotten to seven figures. And in this situation, the hiring and firing people has been the biggest single challenge for us. You guys talked about the first, well, you and Justin Waller in your interview talked about offering somebody like $2,000 the first week to quit, and just
Yeah.
seeing where their heart is in it. Their heart is in it. What are some of the tells that you see? First off, how do you hire good people? I mean, for myself personally, I'm having a hard time finding like qualified salespeople for my company. And then when do
Yeah.
you know when to let them go?
So my business model has changed considerably now. I basically run what I would call a company of one. There's a book based on that title. You can go out there and grab it. It's a nice little summary of how a lot of entrepreneurs have structured their life in such a way that they don't have or need employees, but can still do seven, maybe even eight figures very, very comfortably. Employees are a real pain in the butt, and I think they're going to continue to be a significant problem for many businesses going forward. So I'm not a big fan of them. If I use anybody as far as human labor, I use contractors, generally speaking, but to put them on payroll, I'm not a big fan of it. Now, that being said, watching that interview that I've adopted a whole bunch of strategies that make hiring and retaining top talent a more efficient process. But even knowing all those things and testing through all of them, today, if I were to recommend somebody start a business, I would say start it and run or pick a type of business where you don't need employees, where you don't need
Yeah.
HR.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Definitely.
it's entirely possible today.
Yeah, definitely a lot of complications. When there was just three of us, we didn't have to worry about we hired a lawyer the other day, and I was like, man, this it just got really serious. And by the way, the
Yeah.
lawyer's he's a fan of my content. That's another thing is I don't know if you've had this issue before, but we try to hire salespeople who have finished my Men of Action course. We try to hire
Exactly.
we try to hire our attorney. He was actually I was at a speech the other day. I don't know if you've heard of Elevator Nights with Dan Fleischman. I was there with Ty Lopez, and my lawyer was there. He was sitting in front of me. I'd never met him in person, and he was just sitting in front of me. He goes, "Hey man, good to see you." And I just realized, he was one of our clients before. And so I think that really helps is when they're kind of in the same ecosystem as you, because as far as the motivation and the passion, my sales guys love it because we take them on vacation to Jamaica with 150 girls. They love it. They have a great time. And I feel like that's kind of another part of it that kind of works. Justin Waller talked about taking care of the families of the people who work with him when he was laying down all those metal buildings. So I think that's another thing that really helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a very long conversation, man. I spent 4 or 5 years optimizing office culture, and I mean, even my course, the School of Entrepreneurship. Whenever I open that up for enrollment, one of the biggest things that I push when I'm talking about the course is I don't offer you a lot of information in this course around employees and hiring. I've done it. I'm going to tell you exactly why it sucks, and I'm going to tell you why I prefer to set up and structure businesses where you don't need that to potentially become a problem in your life.
Beautiful. Speaking of Justin Waller, he had a question for you. His question was, has your view of the red pill community changed over time, and if so, how? And the second question is, when are you coming to Miami?
Is he on your phone right now? Is he talking?
No.
Okay.
We discussed this yesterday.
Yeah, I like Justin. So I'll be down in Miami at some point. I know he's down there, and I've had a lot of invites to do podcasts there. So yeah, Justin, I will see you, my man. But my view of the red pill community, okay, well, I'm going to rephrase that. My view of the manosphere has changed. I view it as the mano swamp now.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I really think that it is primarily filled with people that aren't good men or good at being men. That being said, I think there's a lot of good information. And you have to be good at separating the wheat from the chaff. And I don't think the average Joe out there that's looking for help or that's stuck, in his life has got the skills or the tools to do that. So it's a complex question.
Yeah, my producer is agreeing with you 100%. So it's one of these situations where, if I were to explain the concept of gravity to somebody who builds an hydroelectric dam, then they're generating electricity. They're using gravity for that purpose. If someone else uses gravity to drop a nuclear bomb, they're using gravity for a different purpose. I feel like red pill or the ideas from evolutionary psychology are a technology that you can use, but you can use it for good or for bad. And if you need it for a justification to hate other people or to become very evil or angry or whatever, or the worst for me is the justification on why your life didn't turn out the way it was supposed to because the whole world is tilted against you. I feel like that is where it kind of gets harmful. For me, like what you said before, if women wait at the finish line, and fuck the winners. That to me was not a criticism of women. It was a criticism of me. I need to become a fucking winner. That's what that statement meant to me. Yeah.
That's what winners will think. But those with the victim mindset will think, oh, well, I'll never make it to the finish line. So the game is rigged against me. I'm just going to lose. So why bother even playing?
Yeah. When you say this, are you referring to red pill rage? Is that what you mean before? Because you said, I'm one of the things, I'm skipping to the end of your book, but in the last chapter, I thought I really appreciated, you said, let's not blame women for this. I think it's just a function of natural selection. Women have to have a way to sort whichever men are alphas or betas. Now, I think there's an evolutionary mismatch. I think the way they choose, choosing people who look like Post Malone is kind of weird to me, or Tekashi 6ix9ine. I think there's some sort of evolutionary mismatch here. But do you... Is that what you're talking about before when you say the mana swamp?
Yeah. Where do you? I mean, this is a deep rabbit hole, brother.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start with the mana swamp?
So let's go specifically into angry men. Or do you feel
Okay.
like there's some men that are like, I don't think red pill. This is going to be really controversial. I don't think red pill turns men misogynistic at all. I don't think anything that Andrew Tate says makes men misogynistic at all. Just like I
Right.
know, and there have been studies that prove violent video games do not make people violent. What I do
Right.
believe, however, is that people who are already misogynistic come into that community and then they're like, here's a justification for what I believe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so to the point of the angry guys, look, I mean, anger is a legitimate response in the face of injustice. It's okay to get mad. There's nothing wrong with that. But what are you going to do with that anger? Are you going to sit there and let it fester and grow within you and multiply and now you become this enraged ball of like red anger sort of thing? Or are you going to take ownership for the things that you can control and do something to, improve your situation? If you're angry because women haven't chosen you in the past and chosen other guys, well, ask yourself why, right? Because you're only here today because your dad, your great grandfather, your great great grandfather, you can keep going down the line, somehow figured out something that you're milling over right now that's not serving you, right? So the whole victim mindset bugs me. I've never liked it. Some people get angry when I say that, quitting is like winners never quit and quitters never win, right?
Mm.
So there's lots of times in my life that I could have quit. There's lots of reasons that I could give you for why I shouldn't be here today or whatever, right? But I don't adopt the victim mindset, right? I adopted the winner's mindset and I just learned to like I've always had that. I've never sat back and said, F this, we're done, right? Like there's just so many guys today that haven't been given the skill set to deal with things like rejection, when women
Yes.
reject them, or how to do the work in life and have competency skills, like basic competency skills, right? Most guys wouldn't even know how to check the oil or change a flat tire if
Mm.
something happened to their car on a road trip. And that's when women look at them like, is this guy really the best I can do? Like he's got to sit on the phone and find somebody that can do this when he's a man and there's a tire in the spare trunk and this is a basic function that my dad could do or my granddad could do.
Yeah, you talked about that before. Like women would constantly be again another evolutionary. This is an evolutionary tool. Women would constantly be checking for the competency of the man that they're with.
Correct.
And I try to explain to people when we go to a plasticine Homo sapien, if a woman chooses the wrong partner, it's not I end up with a baby or I end up with a fucked up story or a crazy baby's daddy or whatever. You die. You are ostracized from the tribe if you picked the wrong partner. And so
10,000 years ago, absolutely. Today,
exactly.
not so much. And that's the
Yes.
difference.
Yeah. Well, 50,000 years. I mean, Homo sapiens is about 300,000 years old. So 70,000
Yeah.
years ago, you make that mistake and you die. We
Yeah.
came up, and I try to explain to people. So hominids are about 3 million years old. Homo sapiens about 300,000 years old. So you think of 300,000 years and then 11,700 years of agricultural revolution. In that point, we're now the apex predator on the planet. And we can grow our own food, yada, yada, yada. But from those first 300,000 years, you have to think every single thing, every predilection we had as Homo sapiens had to assist in survival. 100%. If any of them didn't, if you had somebody tears their ACL when they're 15 years old, they die. They end up getting killed by whatever predators around there. And so every single thing that we had, our desire, fear of snakes, fear of heights, fear of spiders, those things, or the fact that we like a certain hip to waist ratio, facial symmetry in females, and signs of youth, those things had to be selected for. They had to be natural selection for those things. And people don't understand that. So there's 300,000 years of that. 11,700 years of agricultural revolution, 15 years of Facebook. But because of the recency bias, we think the world is Facebook. We think the world has always been this way, and it's the evolutionary mismatch that causes things like 80% of men on Tinder are considered unattractive, right? I feel like that's where some of this mismatch comes from.
Yeah, nobody understands the evolutionary history of desire and attraction. And I think one of the best books that you can read as a guy is the book, it's titled The Evolution of Desire by David Buss.
Yeah.
You're not going to like some of the stuff that you come across in it, but who cares? Like that's, if you have a problem with the facts, the problem is not with the facts.
Yeah.
So thinking like, you have people today that will get up in the morning and they'll think that their entire purpose in life is to go to school, get a degree, get graduated, get a diploma, frame it mahogany, go out and get a job, work for a guy, like all these things. And it's like, okay, the reason why you're only here is to scatter seed if you're a guy. And if you're a girl, the reason why you're here is to find the best guy that you can lock down.
Yeah. My point is, you can't. When I hear people on the View
You never get
say,
away from that.
yeah, when people on the View are like, when are men going to grow up, or when men are like, why do women, view us inadequately or whatever,
Yeah.
or they have delusional views of like what they can get as a woman. My whole thing is, I don't blame either side. It's an evolutionary pressure that caused these things.
Well, when they say, like on shows like The View, like when are men going to grow up?
Yeah.
What they're basically saying is we now have all these women that have degrees, good jobs, can provide for themselves. They don't need no man. They need a man like a fish needs a bicycle. When are all the men going to grow up and step up to wife up all these women? And what they don't understand is the pool of guys that are above them, because women only date across and up on the socioeconomic scale because of hypergamy. The pool is small. It's not big. Like there's not an army of like hundreds of thousands of men sitting in a dark corner somewhere hiding from these women, and they're just going to grow up one day and show up. That's not how it works. They just don't understand the dynamics of it.
Yeah, and by the way, those men who are above that level also are receiving so much attention from women that the likelihood of those men staying, monogamous is extremely low. It was a great book. I don't know if you've ever read Satoshi Kanazawa's first book, which was Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters. He wrote another book called The Intelligence Paradox. He's been like almost canceled for both of these books, by the way. In The Intelligence Paradox, he talks about as people become more like as you get into higher IQ stratification, they're more likely to cheat. And also, there's other studies that show men are more likely to cheat as you get higher and higher in the income stratus, which is like the top 1%, I believe, is $545,000 a year in the United States. As you get higher and higher, and that this is something that Myron talks about frequently on Fresh and Fit, where it's like you want a guy who's 6'2" and makes $550,000 a year. The likelihood of you getting him is low. The likelihood of you locking him down is extremely low. And the likelihood of you getting him, locking him down, and him not being with any other women is astronomically low. And this is just a function. And the girls are like, no, but it doesn't feel like that should be true. I feel like because I watched this Disney movie, I feel like I deserve this. And feelings that don't have anything to do with it.
Yeah. So there's two things there. So, I mean, first of all, a man's test of loyalty comes when he's successful. A woman's test of loyalty comes when a man is unsuccessful, right? So that kind of sums up what you just talked about there. The other thing too, with that whole like I feel sort of thing, I'm about to ruin this for you and your audience tonight. So I'm going to apologize in advance. But when you start paying attention to the language used between men and women and weaker sort of soy boy beta males, you're going to notice women mostly lead with I feel like. I feel like that's not right. I feel like there should be more like that. Intelligent men that lead with rational thought use words like I think. Okay. Also, beta males, soy boys, like the weaker sort of guys with a low T, they'll also use a lot of the I feel language too. So pay attention to that because you're going to hear it everywhere now.
Yeah, no, definitely. The I feel thing was really big. I like to lead with I just read a study. That's what I like to instead of I think.
Yeah,
I like to lead
even
with
better.
Here's a study of 17,000 women who were surveyed anonymously. Here's a study.
Here's some facts.
Yeah, here's some facts. Here's again, I love the GSS survey, the one that states that 28% of men had zero sexual partners in the last year,
Right.
and this was done in 2018. If you look at the way that scale was going, that hockey stick, right now in 2022, we're probably most likely around 32, 33% of men have had zero sexual partners in the last year. Now, when we look at this, when I try to explain to people, and by the way, some of these are men also, when I try to explain the concept of hypergamy and how the hypergamy scale where men are always going equal or down and women are always going equal or up. When I try to explain that to them and I get denial, I'm like, okay, well, two irrefutable facts, unassailable facts. Number one, we can see on Tinder that 80% of men are considered to be unattractive. And secondly, from the GSS survey, we can see that 33% of men are having zero sexual partners. And so this shows this is an absolutely unassailable, irrefutable fact that we're having a great number of women going after a small number of men at the top. And then anecdotally, that's where I come in secondarily. Like, I'm friends with Dan Bilzerian. He's a buddy of mine. I hang out with him. It is madness how many women I literally listen and tell me, you know what I would never do? I'd never have sex with Dan. That's always what they say right before they have sex with Dan. It's one of the craziest things I've ever said. It's another thing, my friend Vegas Dave is the same kind of thing. Right before they have sex with Vegas Dave, they're like, ew, I would never have sex with Vegas Dave. And then they do it. And it's just it's so crazy to me. And it's one of these situations where, like, I understand that the world isn't the way you think it should be, but and by the way, this is not a function of culture. This is another thing I want to get people to understand. This idea that there's a few guys at the top getting this. When you read about Mubarak the bloodthirsty from, I believe, Morocco had 860 kids or something like that.
Ishmael the bloodthirsty.
Ishmael the bloodthirsty. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
and then also,
Moroccan,
Genghis Khan in his situation, where like 1/2% of all males on the planet have his Y chromosome. This is this is not something that just started recently. It's just social media has made it to where there used to be a bifurcation. There used to be a dating scene in Wichita and another dating scene in Waco. There used to be a dating scene in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and another dating scene in Secaucus, New Jersey. And now there isn't that anymore. Because of social media, they've all sort of pushed into this one massive dating scene. And the reason why I bring this up is there's this girl I used to know. I'm still friends with her. Her name is Jojo Von Southie. She's from Wichita, Kansas. She was a Hooters waitress there. She gets discovered and she ends up flying out to Los Angeles, and she's the first girl I know, to my knowledge, she's the first girl to hit 1 million followers on Instagram. I met her when she was 19. And since then, she's just been traveling the world, doing these magazine covers. She has 10 million followers on Instagram. And my point was, there was probably an injury attorney or a cardiologist that lived in Wichita who was going to marry this girl. But she got pulled to Dan Bilzerian, literally Dan Bilzerian's house. And because of that, now we have this stratification that's happened where there's a few guys at the top who are showing signs of fitness, nice cars. They're able to be funny, the ability to network, all these signs of fitness in men, and these men are having incredible success. And then we have a group of men that are completely being ignored.
Yeah, it's just the reality of the world, man. You know, like we know that the vast majority of women have reproduced throughout history, but I think something like 25% of men have reproduced throughout history. So for most guys, it's been a dead end.
Yeah, 25%. Yeah, correct. Yeah, I was trying to explain this to some people before because they were like ungrateful, and I was like, well, do you realize before the year 1850, half the Earth's population died before the age of 5, and way more than 50% of men who've ever lived died a virgin. Way more than 50%. Yeah. And then when they hear that, they're just. I had a friend of mine, a female friend. I kept throwing these facts at her, and her response was, "It's not my response. Your dick is not my responsibility." And I was like, "There you go. That's the proof of what I was trying to say before." And then in the end, then they're like, "Well, there's no good men." And I was like, I know 50 dudes who would go out with you right now, do anything you want, but because you keep seeing the dude with the Lambo, you can't. What's it called? Recalibrate to understand what's going on, and then you end up, next thing you know, you're 40 and you don't have a relationship, you don't have any kids, you don't have a husband, and that's the reason why.
Yeah, and those same 40-year-old women are the ones sitting on The View talking about, men need to, man up or grow up or whatever. It's like, there's no 40-year-old guys that I know that are worth their salt, that have their life together, that have a nice car, great life, lots of money, influential, they're competent, they're interesting, that are dating 40-year-old women. They're dating younger, hotter women. That's just what men do.
Yeah. This is another thing. You've interviewed Tristan and you've interviewed Justin on your show, Tristan Tate and Justin Waller.
Tristan, Justin, Andrew,
yeah. And one thing that they made a video together, and I'm from Texas, Justin's from Louisiana, and he talked about Gentleman Game, and I was curious what you thought about this because I know Tristan got a lot of heat for this, talking about the simping being the inequitable display of value or whatever of attention. What do you think about that? Like kind of a different way of dealing with this.
Yeah, I think he's right. I mean, what's the definition of a simp? Yes, 10 people, you get 10 different answers, but I think Tristan's definition is probably the closest one that I would agree with. It's an unfair exchange of attention and resources with a woman. And the vast majority of guys today are definitely simping, like you would solve a lot of the problems out there today with women's entitlement issues if guys would stop simping and level up. But it's easier to simp than to do 100 push-ups a day.
Yeah, definitely. That is kind of a rough thing. The other thing is, like, I don't know that we can fix either side. I feel like we just kind of have to, again, we see the river, we can either try to swim upstream or build a hydroelectric dam, that I feel like,
I'm more of a enjoy the decline guy.
It's
like, that's the direction society's going in. I'm going to draw you a map and put some landmines on it. Don't step on them, walk around them, and you should be good.
So, I mean, speaking personally for your own experience, you being a guy with a McLaren and a Lamborghini and 600,000 followers on Instagram, in shape, with your own show, doing well, I'm assuming it's been easier for you in this sort of like age of, for me, I'll tell you, as a 45-year-old man, I've never found it easier in my life because my competition are guys who watch guys who are watching Machine Gun Kelly in a pink dress. Like that, you understand what I'm saying? And like, well, that's my competition. It's like, that's not really competition.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot easier when you got your shit together. Like I'm close to 50 now. Right. So, I'm in an LTR. My gal's great. I have a great life. I can do pretty much anything I want. Like I can go where I want. If it doesn't work out in my relationship, fine. I can get a new one, or I can get a whole bunch of new ones simultaneously. It doesn't matter. I don't worry the way that I did. Like I don't have the same scarcity mindset that I did maybe in my 20s or even in maybe my mid 30s, sort of thing. The sooner guys can figure out, how to unplug from the matrix and really take a good close look at the way the world really works, not what you've been told the way that it works,
Yeah.
the better off that you'll be. Like, I basically wrote this book for my 20-year-old self. And fortunately, the guys that are reading it seem to be getting what they need out of it, man. Like, I run into a lot of people around the world now. I was just down in Mexico, down in Cabo, and I was surprised how many like young Mexican kids came up to me and are like, yo, I read your book. And, they barely speak English, but I read your book and I watch your videos with subtitles. You changed my life. I got this real estate. I got out of this crap relationship. So it's great, man. I mean, the sooner you can do it, the better off that you're going to be 100%.
I had RSD Max on here one time, and I talked about the things that I thought pick up, because that's the original, manifestation of this, or one of the original manifestations of this
Pickup
whole
artistry. Yeah.
pickup artistry. And I feel like the three things that they got wrong is, one, like logistically, they were disastrous. Like they never explained get out of your mom's basement. They try to explain here's how to trick a woman to coming in your mom's basement. And the other thing I think that they completely missed the boat on was social media. And I was curious because you've had some of your guys on there talking about Tinder photos and their social media and stuff like that, and not having. I loved the video you had. I forgot what the two gentlemen's name were, but they were on the Zoom call, and they were talking about the guy, with the blurry photo with his dog, and the guy. Remember the guy with the chainsaw, and like all these all these weird photos. And I like to say, like, dude, you look like a child molester. You look like you understand. An attractive woman in general thinks most men are beta, and now you're coming here with a child molester haircut, and like looking like you're going to human traffic her, and you're wondering why she doesn't swipe right, or you're wondering why she doesn't like your Instagram. Can you talk about how so many men have been so uncalibrated and missed the boat when it comes to because you talk about, listen, if I got my shit together, somehow people have to see it. How people have missed the boat when it comes to dating apps and come to social media.
Yeah, like the whole problem with the pickup artistry stuff that I never liked is it teaches guys to memorize lines, go up to girls as many times as you can in a day. Don't worry about the rejection. If you get 1 out of 100 that give you a number, then great, good job, buddy. But it doesn't teach you to lose the belly fat, to be more influential, to have a captivating life. That's why most of these PUA guys, they can rack up a bunch of notches, but they don't have women in their frame over a long-term basis. It's maybe like, like a bunch of notches come their way, and then they just kind of go sideways. They never really do anything with themselves. So it's like, to your point, getting out of the mom's basement, sort of stuff. Yeah, that's okay. Well, that's kind of like a basic step. Like, don't live with your parents, have a nice pad, have nice furniture, like the restoration hardware couch behind me. You know what those things cost, right? Like you set yourself up in such a way that you signal to the world that you've got yourself together. And to the point of social media and photography, I mean, if you don't have a captivating Instagram and you're a captivating guy and you're influential and you're doing something with your life, why not? Like, why aren't you documenting parts of your life? Some people say that it's broadcasting, or that it's, you don't feel comfortable doing it because only girls do it. Okay, fine. But if you want women in your life, if you want to be recognized that way, then you're going to have to kind of play that game. It's like, not taking a shower before you go out on a date is optional, but you'll probably do better if you smell good when you go out on the date, sort of thing, right?
Yeah. Well, I think about it. I use the example of scalability, right? You think about a guy back in the 1990s trying to pass his mixtape out to different people out of his trunk, right? That's as far as he could go until Napster. That's as far as he could go, right? But when you consume this content, we're doing it off YouTube. Any YouTube video has the ability, not necessarily the probability, but the possibility of getting 1 billion views. Infinite numbers of people could watch any of this content. The scalability is there. So you understand that when it comes to business. Why would you not understand that when it comes to dating? And another example, and this one I use, just from the idea of cars. So one guy's got a Shelby Mustang and the other guy's got a, Lamborghini, and they're both leaving the club, right? And let's just say for whatever reason, women recognize the value of the Lamborghini 15% more than the Shelby Mustang, okay? By the way, Shelby, what's Shelby's first name? I forgot.
Carol Shelby.
Carol Shelby went to my high school, Woodrow Wilson High School in East Dallas. So when you have that whole thing, the guy with the Lambo, let's say he has a 15% advantage. This is 1985. We're both leaving Studio 54 in New York. The valet pulls up my Lambo. I have a 15% advantage over the guy with the Shelby Mustang. Now let's take that advantage and put it on social media. Now it's 15.15 to the nth power. Does that make sense? And what I felt like social media did is it did not make it easier for men to meet women. It made it easier for the top group of men to meet women. So if you had the abs, you were really stunting on the guys who didn't. And if you had the nice car, you were really stunting on the guys who didn't. And if you had the vacation home in Tulum, you were really stunting on the guys who didn't. And I felt like that's one of the things that people didn't understand. If a woman puts up average social media photos and she's averagely pretty, she is going to get attention on social media. If a guy does it, by definition, she thinks he's a beta. But I just try to explain this because I have some, I hang out with a ton of playmates because I host all these celebrity charity events here, and I'll hang out with them, and I'll be like, hey, show me your social media. Let me see what the kind of messages you get. By definition, every one of you who's sliding into their DMs, they assume this is a creepy beta male who is going to throw me into a van. Like that's what they think about.
Yeah.
You come off as like a fucking zombie, and you have
Unless
to.
you have a blue check mark.
There you go.
That's exactly what they're going to think.
There and you even brought up the blue check mark. That's the part that's just so crazy. Like, and I understand it's not realistic for all 500 of my clients to have blue check marks. But what is realistic is for you to show access to scarce resources, for you to wear clothes that fit, to have teeth that are straight. What is realistic is for you to have a relevant haircut. I don't know why I have so many clients that want bushy haircuts on the side and then it's like short on the top. I don't know where this shit comes from. And I keep trying to explain to them, like, it's not that you're coming off as attractive or unattractive. You're not even fucking relevant. You come off as like weird, and they don't understand. There is no level of calibration, which is one thing that I really appreciate about your content, about Tristan's content, about Justin's content, is you guys come from a standpoint, while you're teaching this stuff, you also look like guys who would be attractive to women. Tristan with his suits and the cigars or whatever. Justin, I mean, I don't know if you ever met Justin in public, bro. I walk to clubs with Justin, and all the girls just don't pay any attention to any of us. They just stare at Justin because he's this fucking, Division I tight end. And like in your situation, I mean, I can't even imagine. You said before you're like 6'2", walking around. You're getting out of the McLaren and being like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And it's just one of these situations where you guys are living the life while you're talking about it. Like there's a level of calibration that goes along with it.
Yeah, like being captivating is one thing, but documenting, your life and interesting things that go on, in your life is important. Like I mentioned earlier, I do a lot of consults, and one of the problems that I run into with older guys is, they've been married for 20 years, they get divorced, they're in their 50s or 60s or whatever. They're still in great shape. They look good. They got loads of cash. They drive nice cars, but they're boring. And they're not thinking along the lines of they need to invite a chick into their life.
Yeah.
They think that they need to enter their frame. They need to, let's be partners, equal partners, like that whole, twin tower sort of thing. And it's like, no, women don't want to invite you into their life. You need to invite them into your life. So when you have a captivating social media presence and you do interesting things with your days or your life, document it. I mean, there's some people with lots of money that have photographers that follow them around. You don't even need that. Most people have a decent camera on their phone. Just learn how to take basic freaking pictures and document it. Because what women are thinking when they see it is like, oh, I would like to be there, insert myself there on the boat or in the supercar or at the dinner or with these people. That's what they're looking at when they see that, right?
I have a buddy of mine. He takes this photo with a drone in the Valley of Fire. He stands on this like cliff, and the drone goes behind him, and he gets this incredible shot. And he does it for a bunch of his clients.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be the supercar. It can you can show access to scarce resources, mountain climbing. There's all these sorts of ways that you can show cool places that you went to go visit. I have 20 IG profiles that are my clients, and I copy and paste. Whenever anyone asks a question, I copy and paste and send those. I'm like, get as close to this as you can. You don't need an expensive photographer. There's a way to replicate this and to make things work. One thing I want to talk about, we briefly mentioned this before, and it's the concept of men and rejection. I look at rejection as literally the weight that the world provides for me to lift for me to become stronger. And because of that, I feel like normal men, they have to deal with rejection on an everyday basis. For some of us, it beats us down. For me, it's motivation. If you're LeBron James, or if you're incredibly good-looking guy, or if you were born extremely rich, or if you're an extremely attractive woman, I feel like there's this dissonance between your actual value and then what you think your value is, to the point sometimes where it's delusional. And I think that delusion happens because you're not dealing with rejection all the time. But for 99% of men, the world is telling us we can't afford that car. We're not good enough to get that girl. We don't have enough money for this. We don't have the skill set. The world is consistently rejecting us. And so there's two avenues. We take this rejection and use it as motivation, or we take this rejection and then we start saying, fuck all women, fuck the world, and then we start talking about, conspiracy theories. And I was just wondering, like, do you use rejection as, you've mentioned it before in your book, do you use rejection as a motivation?
Yeah, I've always said don't lose, learn, right? So, I mean, you can call that rejection, but, business transactions, dealing with women, with friendships, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, you can sit there and cry like a little bitch, or you can look at the situation and just say, okay, well, that's an interesting lesson that cost me. I've had lessons that have cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? It's like, I don't sit there and cry about it and say, oh, I was rejected, or that cost me too much money, or how am I ever going to make the money back? It's like, okay, that was $100,000 lesson. I'm not going to do that again. And we'll go off in this direction, and I'll never let that happen, sort of thing. Every successful entrepreneur, every successful guy that I know has been ripped off, rejected, hurt, you name it. They're there because they got back up. So it's a matter of, what are you going to do? You're going to lay down like a little bitch and cry, or are you going to get back up and go and do the work, dust yourself off, and then fix things, right?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, definitely. Uh, I I loved your content when you talked about that, specifically about picking yourself up. The other thing I loved was the idea of men will get into a situation. The quote you said, and I loved this, was, "She touched my pee pee, therefore she's earned it." Do you remember
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
Can you talk about this, where a lot of guys are confused because a woman is having sex with them, then they're like, well, this woman has earned a place to be my girlfriend, versus
Hmm.
there's actual things. Maybe we can go into green flags, actually, where the
Yeah.
actual things that they have to do to earn that position. I look at it like a CEO position. My girlfriend is a representation of this brand, and so therefore she needs to check certain boxes in order to be my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Can you talk about earning it?
Yeah, way too many guys will jump into a long-term relationship with a chick or become monogamous way too quickly just because, they get some. And that's generally because they don't have a lot of experience with women, or they have a scarcity mindset. But women are more than just intimacy, right? Um, are your friends going to take care of you when you're sick? No. I've only ever been taken care of by good women if I've been sick, but your friends don't ever do that. So women offer more than just sex, right? She's got to be a complement to your life. Does she add value to your life? For me, I like to eat and I don't like to cook, so I value a woman that's got good culinary skills. It's one of the reasons why I picked my chick, is she's great, right? And she loves to cook and she loves to feed, sort of thing. So you got to look for more than just, she touched my pee pee to make her your girlfriend. You got to look for, beyond that, because if you're going to deal with her on a long-term basis, her touching your pee pee is a very tiny part of your day. There's more to your day than just that if you're going to invite her into your life, right?
Very tiny for some people, yes, for sure. That's Dude. When you said that, I was like, I was in the gym and I heard that shit. It's like, oh, she touched my pee pee, therefore she's my
Yeah.
girlfriend now. And I was like, I know so many dudes who have done this shit.
A lot of them do it, man. A
Yeah,
lot of them do it. Yeah.
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 You're one of, but I would recommend everyone take the time to go on your clip channel and on your main channel and look at those one-on-one consultations that you do on Zoom. Those are terrific. Where it's the one guy, he's like, I was talking to this. I have a buddy. He's talking to this girl in Serbia, and they hooked up a couple times, and then next thing because the guys never tell you this, Rich. You know what I'm talking about. They never tell you. All of a sudden, you're flying out to Serbia. Then there's an engagement ring. They never come to you and ask questions about this. You see them hanging out with some girl, and you're like, oh, well, that's a fun weekend for him. And the next thing you know, they're like getting married, and she's pregnant. And
Mhm.
you're like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
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 So
It happens so quickly.
yeah.
Like, guys are just rapid, man. They just go. It's like they think marriage is a goal. They think that that is a solution to all their problems. If I just get married, take my vows, she vows to be with me forever, and be loyal and all that sort of thing. This is never going to fall apart. I'm always going to have access to abundant, intimate sex on a regular basis, hanging from the chandelier. Dudes don't understand what they're walking into. They're marching into a slaughterhouse for the most part, and it's their fault. It's not her fault. It's their fault, because guys need to control the frame of the relationship. And what they'll generally do is, as soon as they sign up for the whole marriage and she looks at him as just good enough, is he hands his balls over to her, and she stops admiring him. Like, over
Yeah.
time, the whole betatization through 1,000 concessions.
We can get to this. I think you mentioned a really good point when that guy was talking to you, and you said it sounded like he didn't have a whole lot of options. Dating a woman in Serbia, it's a 20-hour
Yeah.
flight. The first thing I would have thought was like, this guy has such a dearth of, or such a lack of sexual options in his life, that's probably why he got into this situation in the first place. And so let's talk about the concept of spinning plates. What do you think about that? Do you think, personally, I think guys do need to go through a period where they're attractive to women, not a certain type of women, but just attractive to women in general. It's one of the
Mhm.
reasons reasons why I abhor that movie Hitch with Will Smith. I think that movie is about being a psychopath or a fucking stalker. Hitch is supposedly giving you a formula to get one girl. No, that is a fucking third degree felony. What you need to do is become attractive to all women, or become attractive at least to that middle standard deviation of women. Do you have any opinion when it comes to like spinning plates? Do you think guys need to go through that as a period in their life?
Yeah, well, women want men that other women want, right?
Right.
They want men that men want to be, sort of thing. Like that's the whole influential part of it. So, I mean, like the notion of spinning plates is really just dating multiple women simultaneously in a non-monogamous fashion. It's ideal for guys that don't have a lot of experience with women. It's ideal for guys that don't want to be monogamous. It's ideal for guys that have just gone through a divorce because it allows you to sample 31 flavors or 62 flavors or whatever it happens to be that you're going to go through. But I think that far too many guys will just be like, okay, went on a date, that didn't work out. Went on a date, oh, that one worked out, let me see if I can make her my girlfriend now. And it's like, whoa, hold on a second, you were just married for 20 years, you dated 3 girls, and now this one's going to be your girlfriend after 3 months out of your divorce.
Yeah.
Like, how is that a good idea, pal?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That has definitely been
So I
an
mean,
issue.
like, for you to understand what's good and what's bad, and for you to vet women over a long-term basis and to identify red flags and to see what they're really made of, like you've got to date multiple women simultaneously. It's really just adopting their sexual strategy, because that's what women do inherently, is they'll pick a whole bunch of guys to date and they'll date them and they'll pretend like they're not, but they're dating a whole bunch of guys and they'll be covert about it. And then at some point they're going to be like, hey Mike, where do we stand? Because I really dig your vibe, and I want to spend more time with you. And are you seeing anybody else? Because I haven't slept with anybody else, and I really want to blah, 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 sort of thing. And that's when you are now the gatekeeper to the relationship,
Yeah.
because women are the gatekeeper to when sex happens, and men have to be the gatekeeper to when the relationship happens, if that's what you want to do. But spinning plates allows you the contrast. You don't know what kind of car you want to buy until you go out and drive a whole bunch of cars. It's kind of similar to that, right?
The other thing that I notice is that when I do meet women who have their shit together, I talk to them about the guys that they get with. The guys had that phase. Like I have one of my friends back in Austin, she was a bartender, and she would tell me this girl was completely squared away, super pretty, working on her master's degree, everything in every way she's squared away. And then she started working as a bartender with this guy who I know personally has been with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women. And she used to joke about this guy. It's like, oh yeah, I'm working with this dude. He's a big fucking whore. This guy, he jokes about how the women he had sex with in the bathroom. Poof. Want to guess what happened 6 months later, Rich? They were married. Mm-hmm. They were married. Because I do feel like it's one of these situations where I have this problem with my clients where they think I need to build a certain type of good girl status or a certain type of bad girl status. My whole thing is, no, you need to figure out how to become attractive, period. You need to figure out how to just score the basketball from any place on the court, period. You need to take the shots that you can take. And I find that to be a very difficult concept, because I don't feel the same way for women, right? If you were to tell women the same thing, it's a completely different story.
Completely different.
I had this girl, she's a marriage therapist on here, and she was like, I feel like this is a double standard. And I was like, yeah, it is. It is definitely a double standard, because what I asked there were 3 ladies on the last show we did. I was like, do you guys care that much about a guy's body count? And they were like, not really. And I was like, do you think that the men you're going to date or you're going to marry care about your body count? And they were like, yes.
Well, at least they're being honest. I mean, a lot of the women today, when you ask, I mean, when you see them on these shows, are just like, well, if man can do it, then I can do it, sort of thing. And it's like, they don't understand, right? Like, I mean, it's part of the reason why women inherently, when you ask them what their notch count is, they'll be very covert about it. Even the way they add it up in their head, like they'll usually have the number, because what they count is boyfriends, guys they dated over 3 to 6 months, guys that they remember.
Yeah.
They don't count in their head friends with benefits, the guy that they hooked up with in Vegas, the guy they hooked up with in Ibiza. They don't count the guy they hooked up with in Mykonos when they were traveling Europe. They don't count, you know what I mean, right? Like they don't count those guys. So they only remember the guys they have a long-term connection with, because that's what mattered to them.
Yeah, definitely. Never Chris Brown backstage. He doesn't count as
just whatever number she gives you, have it. Some guys will even say cut it down to about a third, but it's not going to be accurate. And ideally, I talk about this in my book. I mean, if you're going to choose a woman over a long-term basis, you want a woman with a very, very low notch count. To find a virgin today is going to be next to impossible, especially the older you get and the older she gets. But the chances you having a good long-term relationship with her, bonding to you in a reasonable way, are significantly higher if she lost her virginity later on in life and has a very low notch count. The more guys she's been with and the younger she was when she lost her virginity, again, statistically based, she's going to be very promiscuous. And she's the kind of woman, when things don't go her way in a long-term relationship or marriage, she's going to say, I'm out. I don't want to be here, right? Because she's done it 100 times already.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, we're talking about the middle standard deviation. Statistically, that is the case. There are stats that back up what you're saying. Whereas, again, this is going to come off as a double standard because it probably is.
It is.
And that's just how the world is, because I can.
There are double standards to
Yeah.
men and women, right?
Yeah.
Like women are the protected sex,
Yeah.
men are the disposable sex. There's all these double standards.
It's funny. Dr. Buss talks about this in the anthropological record, where they looked at skeletons, like old skeletons, and you would find the male skeletons would have axe wounds and arrows stuck in their bodies and broken bones and like crush signs on their, their skulls would be crushed in. The women's bodies,
not so much.
pristine in every case, because it was just like they would keep, whenever one tribe would take over another, they would not kill the young women. That would not be a function that happened.
War brides.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's where it comes to the idea of disposability, and the reason, and part, men are more competitive, and part of the reason why we live shorter lives than women do.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why a lot of men never reproduced throughout history as well, too, is a lot of them died in combat or hunting animals or whatever, right? They never had the chance.
Yeah. Can you talk about this thing? You had a concept about the idea of younger women, and I have dated. Now I'm 45 now, not recently, but like when I was 35, I did try to date women my own age, and then date women that were younger. And you remember the controversial statement that Andrew Tate said, which wasn't controversial to me, which was the idea that it was easier for him to date someone who was 19 than 25. And it's funny, those numbers, right? 19 to 20. By the time they're 25, he was like, they were ran through at 25. And you realize, and then you look at the world and you're like, I'm like out here at Zook or I'm out here at Omnia in Las Vegas. And I'm like, yeah, 25. He's right. I was wrong. He's right.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that whole concept of why you like younger women, or why you recommend that?
I definitely recommend dealing with younger women for all of those reasons. I mean, again, women are beauty objects, men are success objects. Women are looking at women look at a guy's future. A man needs to look at a woman's past, right? So the more peppered her past is, the more difficult she's going to be for you to invite her into your life. And if you're looking at reproducing, having kids, the less likely she's going to be a good mother if she's older and has had all this baggage. If she's a single mother, like, why would you want to raise some other dude's kids? I can't tell you how little interest I have in that, right? But there's guys out there running around right now, wifing up, dating single moms with 3-4 kids from 3-4 different fathers. So generally speaking, younger women are ideal. And it's not just me saying that. They've surveyed cross-culturally around the world every guy from 18 to 70. And if you show them a lineup of women in the entire lineup, they're going to pick 22, 23s, about the primo age that most guys select for. That's just the way that it is. And is it a double standard? Yeah, maybe that sucks for some people, but that's a reality.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, this is what I love about the evidence-based approach. The survey you're referring to is the 1989 37 culture study that Dr. Davis Buss did, which has been replicated. This is, so I manage all of the bikini competitions in Las Vegas, and I do 2 of the biggest ones in the world. And what I found is that when I have judges, it's not an arbitrary pick on who wins. Rich, it's they almost always pick the same girl. I'm told frequently that beauty is arbitrary. The science clearly shows me otherwise. I don't know if you've heard of this thing called FaceApp. It's this thing that uses artificial intelligence in order to make your face more symmetrical and give you more signs of youth. And the thing is, it doesn't know anything about your history. It doesn't know anything about your ethnicity. It doesn't know anything about anything. It's creating a space between your nose, your eyes. It's all it's doing is making you more symmetrical and maybe pushing your cheeks in and all these kind of stuff. And if it has like one answer for all of these questions, then that means, by definition, if this program keeps working and it doesn't know anything about you, by definition, beauty is not arbitrary. Beauty is not subjective, it's objective. And so now, I don't know if you've heard the studies where they overlay 1,000 people's faces over each other, and they take the average of those 1,000 faces, and that face is on average more attractive than anyone in the class. It's like a sociology or a psychology class where they do this. And I've
Mm.
seen this over and over again. In that 37 culture study that Dr. Buss did, in every single, by the way, for those of you who are asking, some of these cultures had no access to Western anything. There no
Mhm.
billboards, no magazines, no television. They didn't even have modern medicine in some of these people who lived in rural Australia, or some of these people who lived in like Papua New Guinea, or some of the people who lived in the Amazon. So that you can't say that these is for reasons of culture. In every single one of these 37 cultures, men were more interested in casual sex than women were. In every single one of these 37 cultures, women preferred men who were taller than them. In every single one of these 37 cultures, you found that men preferred signs of youth, so facial symmetry, signs of youth, and a hip to waist ratio of about 0.72.
Mm.
Women preferred I think you mentioned this in the book.
1.62.
1.65, I think, was the shoulder to waist ratio in men. And there's another survey, and I think this was also from your book. 71% of attractiveness from men, that women see attractiveness in men, comes from upper body muscle, which would be what?
From that ratio. That's why
Yeah.
height doesn't matter as much as a lot of these like doom and gloomer guys think. If you're 5'7", you think it's over for you. Like, be 5'7" and ripped. Like, be fit.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is, none of this is cultural. None of this behaviorism, blank slate shit is. And the problem that bothers me so much, Rich, is that this study was done in '89, and we still have these discussions.
We still fight it.
We still have to fight it.
Yeah.
Again, I understand that people have advantages and disadvantages. I can't play small forward for the Lakers. That doesn't mean I go sue the Lakers for discrimination. I am not 6'8", and I don't have a 42-inch vertical. So I can't play small forward for the Lakers. I cannot perform in that value. So I try to explain to guys all the time, like when you imagine a girl coming up to you and being like, well, I won this championship back in 05 and 06, and I should win yours. And you're like, no, God, I don't see the thing that's there that I want to see. And it doesn't make me a misogynist because I believe this. The fact of the matter is, beauty is not subjective, it is objective. And there are mathematical equations to show this. And there have been studies that prove this. And that is so antithetical to some people's woke narrative. And like, I'm not coming from a place of hate. I'm coming from a place of science. I tried to disprove this hypothesis. But all I do, I did my 46th bikini competition last 3 weeks ago in Mexico. My 46th one. And I'm telling you, we all the guys, we get together and we're like, who do you think is going to win? And we all pick the same fucking person. It is not it's not that arbitrary. And so I just thought that was really interesting that even at this point, we're dealing with that. You keep bringing up the study where it talks about, in general, men prefer this woman who has signs of youth. That's not your opinion. It's
a statement of fact, and it even goes beyond the optics of attraction. I mean, like, a lot of those optics of attraction are really for fertility, for health cues, because a more symmetrical face is generally a healthy body, which is generally a better choice for women to choose to reproduce with. It even goes down to scent too. I don't know if you got into the studies on scent with testosterone, but I mean, they've taken shirts, that they've given shirts to 5 or 6 guys, and they said, sleep with these overnight, and they put them in Ziploc bags, and women smell them, and women consistently choose the most attractive guy just through scent.
Yeah.
Because he's got higher testosterone cues, and he's better looking. They can smell better looking guys.
They can smell better looking. Here's the other part of that study for any of you who don't believe it. They can also smell incestuous behavior. When the people who were related to them slept in those same t-shirts, they could smell, this person is related to me, and found those people to be unattractive. Again,
if the DNA is too similar, then it doesn't smell good to them.
But the thing is, I say this all the time. So I studied physics in college. Physics is a testable model for how the world works. Psychology beforehand was B.F. Skinner and Sigmund Freud. Basically, this is what my opinion about things are. I sat down with a 12-year-old boy, and we came up with this thing like he's in love with his mother, and he has a phallic state, and all this kind of stuff, and the id, the ego, and the superego. And I was like, that's great, Sigmund, but it's really cool that you believe that. Can we back this up with any kind of study? And nobody ever did. Or when we did, we found out that a lot of what Sigmund Freud said was not correct. And then now this testable model of psychology comes out called evolutionary psychology. And all they did was take evolutionary studies, the idea of natural selection, and place it on that lens on human psychology. And when you do, man, everything makes sense. Everything. Our desire for higher sexual selection, our desire for higher status. When people use these ideas, they become billionaires. When you look at the one-click simple status on Amazon, people are like, well, where's the cell phone in the ancestral period? I'm like, there is no cell phone in the ancestral period, but there is stimulus. And this is
Mhm.
overstimulus. That's what they're doing. They're using these evolutionary pressures in order to sell you items. They're using these things in order, like a beer commercial where I'm running Michelob Ultra and I'm like looking at really attractive people that would never fuck with me in a million years, right? And I'm like, what is the point of it? Oh, because I'm looking at these really attractive. Dude, I was looking the other day at somebody, they were selling watches and it was like Giannis Antetokounmpo and then Trevor, the quarterback for the Jaguars. And I was watching this thing and I was like, these are attractive, fit people that have nothing to do with this watch. And I bet you this commercial is incredibly fucking potent. I bet you this commercial works it really, really well. Because why? Because they're using the understanding of how evolutionary pressures created our psychology. But we want to believe in this blank slate theory, which is the idea that if I give a woman a toy truck and I give a boy a Barbie doll, the boy will become more feminine and the woman will become more masculine, completely ignoring genetics and completely ignoring testosterone. That's the reason why people still believe in this blank slate ideology.
Yeah, it's it's funny because I was listening to this book on my flight back. What's it called? Hang on, let me just pull it up because it's something like A Billion Wicked Thoughts or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called A Billion Wicked Thoughts.
Okay.
And there was a section in the book about this kid that was born where they botched his circumcision, and basically they fried off his dick, right?
Yeah.
So the doctor was like, okay, well maybe we should raise this one as a girl, and they told the parents. The parents went for it, and the parents tried to give the kid, like girls' clothing and like dolls and sort of stuff like that. But it never really worked at the end of the day, right? Like there's a lot of upside down things going on out there today in the world because they're look, I don't know if it's intentional, if like the powers that be get together in the room and they're like, okay, this is what we're going to do to fuck up society and pussify it, or if it's just a function of all the stupidity that's going on right now. But there's a general pussification of the West. And it's on the downward decline. That's why, I was saying earlier, just enjoy the decline and, mark out the landmines and don't step on them and, carry on with your life and enjoy it. But this is what society is trying to do. It's trying to convince you to use pronouns. It's trying to convince you that, oh, you're not a boy, you're a girl. You're not a girl, you're a boy, or that you're a furry and you should crap in a litter box. It's like they keep making up all this sort of stuff. And I don't think it's serving, society. And there's no amount of just man up and, get married or whatever the narrative happens to be from whatever side that it happens to be broadcasting at that's going to solve any of that. It's an internal thing. As guys, you have to take ownership and lead yourself. You have to lead your wife. You have to lead your girlfriend. You have to lead women. You have to be that guy, right? There's nobody coming to save you.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit about guys. Like I said earlier, nobody gives a fuck about your struggles. They hang out at the finish line and they pick the winners.
Yeah. The nobody coming to save you thing is just such a incredibly liberating statement when you
Yeah,
when
it's
you come
like
to realization.
yeah, it's like, I've said this on a couple of different podcasts, but it's like, there's the guys that are like, oh, nobody cares. They kind of just like, nobody gives a shit about me. And there's the guys that are like, nobody gives a shit, right? And they're just like,
Yeah.
it's freeing, right? And if you get to like the latter part and you're free of all that, nobody gives a shit, then you can take full ownership of your life. And every little reward, every win you have along the way is all yours 100%, brother.
I just love whenever I hear people and they say that, nobody gives a shit about or nobody's coming to save you and they see that as a bad thing. And I'm like, you live in a country where a president, the guy was fucking a porn star before while his wife was pregnant, they still elected him. You live in a country where a decathlete changes his gender from male to female, runs over someone, kills them in a drunk driving accident, becomes woman of the year. Like, you think people care? Like, do you guys remember Russia invaded Ukraine? Nobody's even talked about that in like 5 months, dude. Like, it's so crazy how people forget about these things that just happened. Jordan Belfort goes to jail for 15 months for securities fraud. He gets out and he's like the most popular sales guy in the whole world. Last time I checked, do you guys remember when Logan Paul walked into that forest and there were people strung up that hung themselves and he was canceled because of that? Then he does one fight with KSI. He's the single biggest male influencer in the entire world. But it's something you said previously that just made me laugh. The idea of like some guy making I hate Andrew Tate videos, like dressing up like a furry and then like crapping into like a shit box. That's all I can think about. It's like that's all I can think about when you say that.
Haters, man. You get all these haters out today that like try to bring you down to their level, and it's like that's it exactly. Like hate always comes from beneath you. It
Yeah.
never comes from above you. It's always somebody beneath you. It's like envy and jealousy.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why they get so hung up on it. It's like, you know what? If you're so envious and so jealous, then why don't you stop being a little bitch and go and do the work?
Yeah, it is interesting. I love that quote. It's from Denzel Washington. It's like people above you are never the ones who are criticizing you. It's always people below you.
100%.
Yeah,
Always.
definitely. And when they make it, the other thing is like I do appreciate criticism, like constructive criticism. I ask for it from the guys who work in my company. I ask for it from my clients. But when it's constructive, that's fine. It's just when people just go off and immediately are personal, which I'm sure is something that you experience with YouTube commenters that don't have an avatar. I just can't think of a lower form of life than those people. But those
Yeah,
are
I
the
just
ones.
don't read comments anymore. That's my
Really,
strategy.
that's
Yeah.
probably a good strategy. I read them right before I go to the gym. That's actually what I've been doing. I get really
Okay.
angry and then just hit the bench press max.
Fuck this guy.
Exactly, for sure. No, but going back to your point before, one of the things that a lot of people have a problem with is that you have an XY chromosome and an X chromosome, and then when men and women are born and go through puberty, you have significantly different levels of testosterone and estrogen. Men have about 17 times as much testosterone as women do. It peaks somewhere between the ages 19 and like 23, somewhere in that area. And so there are not just physical differences. It's not just that the depth, like the width of my elbow is thicker, therefore I can lift more weight, or that my skull is thicker, or that I have larger joints or whatever, or higher muscle mass, or deeper voice, or facial hair. There are neurological differences between men and women, period. Otherwise, you wouldn't. Here's one of my favorite studies. They talk about, Dr. Buss talks about this also. He says, when women cheat, men ask, did you fuck him? When women cheat, when men cheat, women ask, do you love her?
Correct.
When homosexual men get cheated on, they ask, did you fuck him? When lesbian women get cheated on, they ask, do you love her?
Correct.
This is unassailable proof that there are neurological differences between the biological genders, right? And this is not a function of blank slate. This is a function of evolutionary pressure and genetics. And so that's a lot of people don't like this idea. I don't know if you've ever read The Intelligence Paradox or something that, like, people don't have a problem with the idea of somebody's eyes being blue because both of their parents had blue eyes, or someone being 6'3" because they had two tall parents. People have a serious problem when it comes to the idea of, like, I'm more aggressive or more intelligent because my parents were like that. Because when you have two smart parents who have a smart kid, they're like, yeah, intelligence is heritable. When you have two dumb parents that have a dumb kid, they're like, well, it can't possibly be my fault. No, none of this is true. All this it's blank slate. All this, the reason why my kid's dumb is because of the education system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Point and sputter, right? It's everybody else's fault but their own.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I love the idea of that. One of the other quotes I really like, by the way, you have a lot of great quotes. I don't know if you have them all listed somewhere, but like in 2 sentences, because I posted some of your quotes on my Instagram and people like them. If she sees you as a beta, she's always going to see you as a beta. And the idea of, like, the work you have to put in to get out of that frame versus just starting over. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. A lot of guys will, again, she touches his pee-pee, he gets into a long-term relationship, married, girlfriend, whatever. If you go through the process of betatization through 1,000 concessions, which isn't a question of if you're going to go through it, it's just to what extent, okay? Because women will shit test guys, and if you yield, then you will start going through the process. Not everybody gets betatized though, right? Like, some guys will push back. Even me, the guy that wrote the book, that makes the videos, that has 500 million views on YouTube, even I have to check myself sometimes to make sure that she's in my frame, sort of thing. So, sorry, back to the original question, Mike.
The original question was, it had to do with, hold on, am I losing my shit? I forgot. What were we talking about here? Oh, if she sees you as a beta, she'll always see you as a beta. And because I agree with you totally.
Yeah, when she sees you there, then you're kind of screwed, right? Like, when she basically sees you as a beta male, she doesn't look up to you.
Yes.
She gets up in the morning, she's disgusted by you. She doesn't want to sleep with you. She'll cry after sex, for example. I've heard stories like this, bro. You're kind of screwed. It's very, very, very difficult to fix that. There's a lot of, like, subreddits out there, and, like, men's coaches and, like, masculinity coaches that will try to convince you that you can fix it and you can just, lean into God, or you can lean in your masculinity and grow a beard and, drink, darker beer, sort of thing. And that'll fix it all. But for the most part, once she sees you as a beta, she's always going to see you as a beta. I mean, it's easier to construct a brand new relationship than it is to fix an old broken one, right?
You guys hear that? Grow a beard and drink darker beer. Man, she'll come running back. So here's the thing. You said before about a scarcity mindset, and you talked about people having a victim mentality, right? Rule number 3 in Men of Action is abundance is always the answer, unless you have a heroin addiction. But
Mm.
abundance is always the answer. So when guys ask me, I want to get over my ex, I'm like, you need to see more women. When guys ask me, I want to get my ex back, the answer is, you need to see more women. When guys ask, I want to get better at dating, the answer is, you need to see more women. When guys ask me, like, what should I do in order to get better at reading? I was like, well, you need to read more books, by people, by mentors, that people that you look up to. I want to get better at business. You need to read more books by people, mentors you want to look up to. What do I do in order to, get better with my fitness? You need to hang out with more people who are in the shape that you want to be in. What do I do when I want to get better with my business? You need to find more entrepreneurs that have the business that you already want. The answer is always abundance. The answer to get over your problem or to get rid of the problem is always the same answer, right? The answer is more and better. And so that's why I say, when you were talking before about how do I fix this relationship, find out, like, there's probably a lot of guys right now who are watching this who, like, think about a relationship that they're trying to fix. If you set boundaries around yourself and actually started dating other women, you're all of a sudden going to get this DM, where you at? What are you doing? From her, out of nowhere. And this goes back to a previous thing we talked about. How do we show that? We actually show it on social media. This is one of the other things why I think social media is so important, is because when I do level up, I don't want to brag about it, but there needs to be some passive way for me to show it. And when you do that, it's incredible because of the scalability of it, how much you can show when it comes to something like that. So I agree with you. Like, don't try to fix those other relationships. Go off to other ones, and you'll be shocked at how many of them, like, come right back for you.
Yeah, you'll be surprised the amount of steps that they want you to take to try to fix a broken relationship. I mean, look, I get it if you got small kids and you're married and you've got your not tied up, with a life of another person sort of thing, and you don't want to lose access to your kids, you don't want to lose access to your financial resources, you want to give it the good college try. Some guys might fix it. But I think, for the most part, like we said earlier, once a woman sees you as weak, incompetent, basically as a soy boy beta male, you're going to have a hard time fixing that. And to be honest with you, for the most part, most guys don't have the gumption to fix it if they're still in that relationship,
Yeah.
if they still have her around. It's only when they lose her completely and they hit rock bottom and chaos ensues, and it's like, oh, well, she left me for Steve from accounting. Like, why did that happen, sort of thing. Then they start going looking for answers on the internet or on YouTube, and they find something like a clip that I said something. That's when they start, like, that's when it hits them,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And then they're willing to really do the work. But, for the most part, a lot of these guys, once they've been betatized and she's literally disgusted by him, like she doesn't even want to touch him, sort of thing. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They'll go and get some stupid book like the 5 love languages and think that they have to give her words of affirmation or some bullshit like that. And that book's been disproven, by the way, 100 ways.
Bro,
like,
oh
yeah.
my God. Have you seen the meme? It was like, at some point, men need to decide whether or not they want to call out women for astrology or get laid. Have you ever seen that meme? That's hilarious.
Yeah. You can go to your energy crystals and your astrological signs, but it's not going to work, man.
Oh,
she needs to
God.
look up to you. She needs to be excited by you.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Let's talk about this. I loved the conversation that you and Justin actually had about shit testing from guys, because you run a business, and I've seen the same thing happen where people will push the limits. I had a guy that I worked with, and it was just like, yeah, I'm sorry I didn't pay you on this day. I didn't pay you. Like, he wasn't paying me commissions that I was owed, and it was very clear to me that because I didn't set a boundary, he would keep doing it over and over again. Can you talk about, because this concept of shit testing is not just a function. For women, it's like, I need to make sure that I'm with the alpha protector that I think that I'm with. Can you talk about how you may also get it from employees and other men in your life?
Yeah, so I started to use this line that I learned in my 20s. Don't make your problems my problems, right? I can't come into work today because of this. I can't pay my vendor bill for another 2 weeks because I have another supplier that ripped me off, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Don't make your problems my problems. And if you're going to set firm boundaries in your life, you have to do it everywhere. You just can't do it with women. You can't, like, if you're the guy that's like, oh, I read the Unplugged Alpha and I'm going to set boundaries and I'm going to have frame now, but you let some supplier walk all over you, or you have a problem employee that you're too much of a pussy to get rid of because it might cost you too much, you're the only person that knows how to do that job, then you're screwed. You have to set firm boundaries everywhere, and you got to hit hard, right? You have to let people know where you stand. I've often said this, and people don't like this, but it's true. It's assholes that get things done in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, one of the things recently in my business, I've had to let a vendor go, and I like the guy a ton. I really like him. And it was one of these situations where you can set those boundaries, but I didn't have to be, personal about it or be rude about it. I just literally showed him the metrics. I'm like, these are the metrics we asked you to stand up to. Justin talks about these are the 5 things you're responsible for. Remember, this is the same kind of thing. I gave him he had 1 metric to worry about. We didn't hit that metric. I appreciate what you're doing. We can work maybe on something in the future, but this isn't working anymore. And because it wasn't personal, and because I did it up front, I think that made it a lot easier. You have to set those boundaries because a lot of times people don't get fired because you like them. I love that idea that, just talk about that too. I love that idea. People get fired regardless of whether you like them or not, right? That was something I learned in the military. The best pilots that I was a navigator. The best pilots I flew with, some of them were terrible people, like big fucking assholes. But their discipline in the cockpit was the best, and that was one of the things that I noticed. One of the things
people always get fired for fit. Remember that. You're going to get hired for your resume and for your skills, but you're going to get fired for fit.
Yeah, for sure. And then you had a statement about that. It was like hire slowly, fire quickly.
Yeah.
Hire slow, fire fast. Yeah.
So, take your time when it comes to business partners, with women, with, whatever it happens to be, to see what they're made out of, right? Yeah. Let some stress, let some struggles, let some chaos sort of hit that relationship between you and your potential business partner, between you and a woman, sort of thing. See what they're made of. And if you see that they are a problem, they don't need 5 tries at it. They don't need like nine rounds at it. It's like, you screw up. Maybe once you're going to let them off, fool me once, fool me twice, it's on me. You got to cut them off.
Yeah. I also want to point out, because we skipped this over, and I meant to mention this before, the term Chad ThunderCock that I do use on my podcast sometimes, it came from you. That was, what was, Rollo uses the guy at the foam cannon party. Like, that's the traditional guy, you know what I'm saying? And you use Steve from accounting, and then Chad ThunderCock, which is because here's the reason why, dude. Yeah. There's a bunch of strippers here from Thunder from Down Under, and one of them's named Chad.
There you go, man.
and this dude is like, he's just banging all these. It's so exactly what you're. Every time I see this dude, I'm just like crying, laughing. I'm like, it's Chad Thunder.
You're gonna know him when you see him.
Oh my God.
When you see the guy, because he's out there. So is Kevin from sales, and Steve from accounting. Steve. You guys are all
oh man, I just want to draw, like, I would do a cartoon of Kevin from sales and Steve from accounting. It's so funny, man. Oh man, I love that. Okay, here's another thing I want to talk about. So you talk about a lot about freedom. You have a business of one. You talk about having a lot of freedom. But I'm curious what it was like for you operating your business during the pandemic. There were a lot of confiscatory policies that were going on there. I can imagine you didn't agree with a lot of them. What was that like for you trying to run your business during that period?
Well, I mean, given that I'm online with what I do, it didn't really affect it that much. The only problem that I had was when people were saying, "Hey, we want to have you come down for this podcast," or this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, you couldn't travel.
Yeah.
There was just too many hoops to jump through. Like, I don't even like traveling when there's no hoops to jump through for like vaccination proofs and stuff like that, let alone everything that you got to do to travel in those circumstances. So it's just like, that was really the only inconvenience. Aside from that, I like that I can do this online. I mean, I could literally do this from anywhere in the world. I could do this from a sailboat in the middle of the freaking ocean if I have a Starlink connection to a satellite. I could literally do this anywhere.
Yeah, beautiful. And then just out of curiosity, when you're driving those cars and you're doing that setup, like what do you use? You use a GoPro? Do you stick it on the windshield? How do you do your audio? How does that whole thing
work? I use a GoPro. It's covered in dust because I just came back from Baja, so it looks kind of shit right now. But I use a GoPro Hero 9, and I have a mod pack for the Hero 9 with goes around. I guess again, it's covered in dust. I got to clean it off. But these aren't the greatest. Actually, the ones with the lav mics that I could clip to my seatbelt have the better audio. So I might have to figure a way to switch that up and change it to a different setup. But yeah, I'm kind of famous for making videos in my cars. I've noticed a lot of people since then have sort of copied it and done nearly the same thing. But I didn't get in my car and drive around to make the video. It was because I was doing something already or traveling somewhere. Like, I like listening to podcasts while I drive just so I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So it was like, all right, well, I got to go to the office or I got this appointment. There's something that I want to talk about. And rather than sitting in front of my desk in a boring environment, I like cars. I'm very comfortable talking in cars. I'll just have the conversation with the camera and do it while I'm going somewhere.
Do you feel like you have better ideas and better discussions while you're driving?
I do sometimes. Yeah, man. I think if you sort my videos, you'll probably see the ones that have way more views seem to be the ones in the car.
Yeah, definitely. I thought that was really interesting. I think it's kind of a corollary to, I don't know if you ever read the book, The Story of the Human Body, I believe, is by Daniel Lieberman. And he talks about human beings were built to walk. We're built to travel long distances, and when we
Yeah.
do, so when you hear billionaires, they're like, I have to go make a tough decision. I need to go take a walk, and they literally mean take a walk. Homo sapiens were built with adductor and abductor muscles. We were built with kneecaps so that we could walk upright, unlike other primates. And so, like our evolutionary history, there's another book called Spark, which talks about this. Like normal exercise, just walking or jogging for a certain period of time, it gets your norepinephrine, your dopamine, and your serotonin levels in the right amounts versus taking like Prozac. So it's
Yeah, it's funny you say that,
yeah,
because whenever I do like one of my group Zoom meetings, I'm almost always walking. Like I'll just grab my phone, throw in the headphones, I'll go for a stroll.
yeah.
As long as it's not windy out and the wind's going to blow the mic out, I'm almost always walking whenever I have those
It
meetings.
would seem that way, like from evolutionary times, it was just one of these things where when you're walking, now you can protect the tribe. When you're walking,
Mhm.
you're more alert. When you're walking, you can keep your heart rate up without, expanding a bunch of energy. And I'm not specifically talking about running or high intensity training. I mean, just the
Mhm.
act of walking, I think does seem to help with certain inspiration in certain people,
The
certain
interesting
successful
thing
people.
about that too is also with men is you'll notice that you tend to have better conversations when you're
Yeah,
walking side by side or when you're sitting side by side. And the reasoning behind that purportedly is because you would sit there stalking animals for hundreds of thousands of years as nomadic hunter gatherers, and you would often be side by side, shoulder to shoulder, having either conversations in the bushes or walking somewhere going to do something. So it's a very comfortable thing for me to do, I find anyway, for productivity.
yeah. When I do interviews too, we're kind of maybe at a 45-degree angle, but I feel like the same way. And also, I'm used to the communication between the pilot and the co-pilot because I was an Air Force captain. And
Right.
when I flew civilian, it was one of these things where my instructor was always sitting to my side, to the
So
side
it's
like
always
this.
tandem.
Yeah, definitely always tandem. That is really interesting. The other thing that I really look at, and I feel like a lot of people miss, is the idea of networking being an evolutionary adaptation in humans. Like you understand, like other animals, there's a few examples. You know the whole thing in Jurassic Park with the Velociraptor. One of them's here, and the other one gets him from the side. Obviously, that's just conjecture. Like
Mhm.
hyenas, there's a few animals that do this, but for the most part, animals do not work in tandem like that. Chimpanzees, there's very few examples of this. Also, dolphins do this too. But
Mhm.
for the most part, the idea, I think one of the reasons why we love watching sports, athletic competition so much, and why we cheer for our army versus the other guy's army is because this idea of like men coming together as a group and accomplishing a goal. Personally, I find that to be the highest form of accomplishment is when
Mhm.
like it's not just me, becoming wealthy because of my business. It's dragging some of my sales guys who are like broke college students and getting them more money than they've ever gotten in their entire life. Do you have that feeling also, the concept of teamwork?
Yeah, I love teamwork. When you have a great team that you can put together, it's one of the best feelings ever. But again, like I'm the guy that's a company of one. Even as a kid when I was growing up, I just didn't want to rely on others for my success. So like I tried playing sports like volleyball and other team sports and stuff like that, but I always felt more comfortable playing games like chess or even in motorsports because then it's man against man sort of thing. Those are the ones that I exceeded in, but I
Yeah.
still love winning with friends too.
But when you see your clients have success, though, like for me, that is a very proud moment when somebody is going through a horrific divorce, and then I see them and they're like the happiest they've ever been in their life.
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean, it's
that
great when you
yeah,
have those wins. I mean, like I got guys that have like tattooed dates on their like body,
yeah,
that like are so meaningful because that was a pivot when they changed over, right?
yeah, definitely, man. Like that. That's when you talk about having passion for your company. One of the things is my sales team. I don't let them tell me how much a guy paid because I don't want to treat anyone differently. I just want
Mhm.
them to win. I have clients that pay all different price points, but when I do those group calls, I want to treat them all the same. When I do the free calls, I want to treat them all the same because I need to stay in this feeling of gratitude where when they succeed, I feel better. And as long as I keep doing that, I know the business will continue to grow because you're not coming from a place of greed, right? You're coming from a place where you're trying to create wins for other people.
There's so much money out there for everybody.
Oh my
It's
God,
it's
yes.
unbelievable. Like
Yeah.
the guys that are like, "Oh, all the rich people have the money and I'll never get any and I'm screwed." It's like, dude, you're just going to stay, if you want to be a loser, you're going to be a loser. That's
Yeah.
just the way it is.
Definitely, definitely. By the way, if you guys want to make some money and you guys are high ticket salespeople, hit me up because we're looking at. When I hear about we're in a recession, dude. I need to hire 50 people. I don't feel like we're in a recession. I can't find qualified people to hire, so I don't see it that way at all. Can we talk about another thing? You mentioned before because you can see it when you're driving. You have some burns on your arm. You mentioned,
Mhm.
I believe in your book, you talked about having third degree burns. What was that? What was that whole situation from?
Yeah, that was from when I was a toddler. I was around 2 or so. I mean, you can probably see it on my chest a little bit here on my shirt, but I've
Mm.
got the burns on my chest too. But I pulled a kettle of hot water on myself when I was a child. Ended up in the hospital for a month or two or something like that. They did skin grafts for my legs, for my thighs up. And I was always that different looking kid, in school. I was the only kid that had scars that I ever saw. I think there was maybe one kid in my entire school that had like a small burn on his wrist from like coffee or something like that. Um, and that took a while for me to get over, so all those guys that are out there like poor me, okay, well, yeah, I mean, look, I'm partially blind, I don't have any hair, I got scars all over my body, like what's your excuse? Like, do you want to really adopt the victim mindset and live it, or do you want to like get past it? Because getting past it is really, really important if you want to become the best version of yourself, really, at the end of the day.
Have you ever seen Nick Santonastasso?
No.
He
Is
is
that the guy with no legs and arms?
no leg, and he's missing his right arm.
Yeah,
Whenever I have a client that gives me the slightest bit of ingratitude,
yeah.
whenever I do that, he's the first guy I show, and I tell these dude to shut the fuck up, bro. This guy he was born with hand-heart syndrome. He's like 7 people in the world that's alive that had that shit.
Yeah.
He's dating like a fucking supermodel. He's making millions of dollars being an influential coach online. He comes in my studio, bro. He doesn't need help from anyone. He's just hopping up on the chair like it isn't shit, and he's got one arm and one finger on one arm. And you're sitting
I
there
used
complaining about shit.
Yeah, I
Bro,
used to do that with Sean Stevenson. I mean, he's dead now. He died in his early 40s, but I did a couple of interviews with him. I think there's one on my YouTube channel still. Little guy, 3 foot tall, broke every bone in his body, married a gorgeous chick, very successful. He was charging $25,000 to do speaking events. He would charge $12,000 a day to do psychotherapy sessions, with people, like very, very successful. So, I mean, it doesn't matter what you do or who you show them. If somebody wants to lose at life, if they don't want to do the work, they're always going to find an excuse. It's either like winners find a way to be successful, losers find excuses as to why they're not successful. That's what it just boils down to.
yeah, definitely. You talked before also about paying people for mentorship, which is one of the,
Yeah.
I think, one of the most underrated things. Going back to what I said before about Homo sapiens networking being an evolutionary adaptation. As humans, we can pass down our oral history, and for the majority of human history, up until the agricultural revolution, up until like the Sumerians started putting things down on tablets. We were only passing down information about stay away from that place because that's where the lion lives, right? Or
Mhm.
don't go to here because these berries are poisonous. We have this oral history that we would pass down from generation to generation. Can you talk about what I'm saying is that's an evolutionary adaptation? Can you talk about how finding mentors has been such a big deal for you and helped you with your business?
Yeah, I don't understand why people are so stingy with this. It just doesn't make any sense to me. The first business coach that I hired was about 12, 14 years ago. His name's Cameron Harold. I actually did an interview on my channel with him. Very, very well connected guy, does awesome today. I still chat with him from time to time. I was paying him maybe $2,000 or $3,000 a month for like an hour's worth of coaching. And it was a literal game changer in my business at the time. And I do this today myself. Like I book myself out at a reasonably high rate. I mean, some would say that it's overpriced, but look, you want basic advice, go pay the basic guy. Like I got the scars, I've been up and down, I've run the successful businesses, I know how to do a lot of things. So there's a reason why I charge what I charge to people when they want to talk to me. Like you can go and make all the mistakes yourself. You can burn through all the time and money yourself, but the least expensive way to get knowledge, to get experience is from others that have done it, that have already made the mistakes. It's far cheaper and it's far faster. There's lots of great mentors out there. There's lots of great platforms. Most people go about it the wrong way. Like I get hit on all the time. I'm sure you get this too, Mike, where guys are like, hey, I want to work for you. I'll do whatever you want me to do, and I'll make you a billionaire if you make me a millionaire, or some bullshit like this. And it's like, who are you, and what skills do you
Yeah,
have exactly, and
yeah,
why should I even talk to you? Right? You want to lead with value, not can I pick your brain? Because what successful people hear when you say, "Can I pick your brain?" or "Can I have a coffee with you?" or "Hey, if you're ever in this," the one that I love is, "Hey, if you're ever in this town traveling, hit me up and I'll buy you a coffee." Like, why the fuck would I stop to look you up when
bro.
I'm connecting in a flight in this obscure
10
town?
times a week. 10
You know what
times
I
a week.
mean? And
Yeah,
it's like,
for
dude,
sure.
lead with value.
Yeah.
Like, come to me with something that's going to offer value to my life, because guys like me, we get hit on this all the time.
Yeah. It's funny. Brad Lee, I thought he had a really great quote. He was, he's a coach that lives out here in Vegas. And he said something to the effect of like, don't come to me asking what you can do for me, because you're already asking me for something. It's like, just come to me with some value already, right? It's not that hard for you to look up some of these things. I've been very open about this. I need people to make clips for me. I need high ticket salespeople for me. I need setters. There's a bunch of stuff that we're looking to hire. I'm very open about this. If you want to do this, then that's fine. If you don't want to do this, like, I'm sorry, bro. You seem awesome. I can't meet you for coffee. I've got, you know what I'm saying? I got a podcast to do. I'm hosting 2 other shows and I have 500 clients.
Hey, Mike, can I pick your brain? And what you're really hearing is you want to pick my pocket and steal my time.
Yeah, it's exactly. And by the way, when I was starting, I felt like I could help these dudes. And I legitimately, I say this, I legitimately do not have the time, guys. I'm not trying to be messed up, but like when I'm doing 17 one-on-ones, like back to back to back like this, and I'm getting to the point where I'm going to have to price myself out of this. It's one of these situations where I'd like to be able to help you. And then on top of that, I do a free call every other Monday for 3 hours, answering any question you want for free. You can't just come on there. Like, it's just so crazy to me. I have to come on your time, and that's the thing that becomes kind of difficult.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I offer the free call-ins as well.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about another thing. I think you're a little bit older than I am, and I talked to some other people about this, and the idea of TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, the controversy behind it. Dude, personally, I think the incredible success I've seen I started when I was 42. I don't recommend you do this when you're in your early 20s. But when I think the incredible success that I've seen with some people on TRT, I believe that this will be labeled toxically masculine in the next 5 years. I think it's growing so fast and it's causing so many men to change their lives, to get six-pack abs in their 40s and become successful, that this is going to be a new target for, kind of a woke mob is the idea of TRT.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Andrew Huberman summed up testosterone beautifully. He said it makes effort feel good.
Makes effort feel good, yeah.
So, I mean, if you're an older guy and you got low T and you get on therapeutic doses of testosterone, yeah, I mean, going to the gym feels good. Working feels good. Wins feel good. Women feel good. Like, you just feel good all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like this dial that you can turn up and turn down when you want to. Like, it's funny when people go like, Rich, what are your testosterone levels? It's like, whatever I want them to be, dude. If I want them lower, I can dial it down. If I want them higher, I can dial it up, sort of thing. But I mean, it's not a game. Like, it's not a toy. You have to be careful with it. There's a cascade of hormones that modify and change when you start adding therapeutic testosterone. You got to be careful with your organ health because testosterone is nephrotoxic, so it'll damage your kidneys. They've done studies like they one of the longest term studies that they ever went through, I think, was with monks that were, I think they were in Korea, if I'm not mistaken, and they were all what do you call it when they cut off their nuts?
They're castrated.
Eunuchs, castrated. They're basically like castrated eunuchs, and they lived something like 22 years longer than the average male.
Yeah.
Over a several hundred years study, simply because their kidneys lasted longer because they didn't have any testosterone. So, adding therapeutic testosterone has benefits, but you have to manage it properly. Do not use one of these cookie cutter doctors that just writes you a script and says, here, take 200 milligrams, take this AI, take this DHEA, and then just, we'll check your bloods every 6 months or something like that. Find a really, really good doctor, a really good clinic. My guy used to be an ex-bodybuilder. He knows his shit like the back of his hand. He's really fucking good.
Yeah, I have 2 doctors that look after me. One of them is at a very, very strict clinic, and the other one, he's a bodybuilder. And I compare their notes, and then I know Jay Cutler and Dan Bilzerian, and I know I would recommend everyone watch More Plates, More Dates. I would recommend everyone watch.
Yeah, he's great. Derek's awesome.
Greg Duchette also. I would recommend you guys watch that, because one of the things why I like watching them is because those guys talk openly. Jay Cutler does. Bilzerian talks about it in his book. Greg, More Plates, More Dates, and so does Duchette. I was on steroids and then I got off of it, and then this is what I did when that was happened, and these were the effects. That's why I like listening to those guys a lot. I think it's really important. And then you brought up the 200 milligrams. So the idea of sports TRT. Have you heard this? This idea where guys go on like certain periods of time and they'll go up to, because you can find, dude, let me tell you, you can find a doctor that will prescribe you anything. I don't know how it is in Canada, but here, I met this one doctor and I was like, just name it. I could probably find it somewhere. I mean, other than like fucking Equipoise and Masteron, they can probably get anything for you. And I was just curious, like, have you, so here's the reason why I bring this up. I'm not recommending this, by the way, and I'm not a doctor, but I've heard guys be like, I cannot get this body fat off of me. When you look at Tyson Fury, he is the heavyweight champion of the world. He is eating better than me, and he's doing more cardio than I am, and he's still got this blubbery dad bod. I feel like with some guys, there's this genetic limit that they can't get to. That if they did like one cycle of Anavar, or maybe, and again, this is just I've heard this opinion. I'm not espousing this. One cycle of Anavar, or maybe they did like 200 milligrams of test for a summer, that it would be able to change them. They'd find that baseline and then work back, because that's essentially what Greg did. That's essentially what Derek did. That's essentially what Bilzerian did. Is that they built this frame by using anabolics, and then they got off of it completely, and now they're taking like 140 milligrams a week or something like that.
Yeah, you want the minimum effective dose. Like
Yeah.
I used everything that a doctor would prescribe on top of what the doctor,
Yeah.
prescribed. Some people call it TRT plus, right? Like,
Yeah.
you go down to Mexico, you can get whatever the hell you want from a pharmacy, right?
Bro.
But everything has downstream effects. Like, Mike said, you look at these videos that Derek's put out on More Plates, More Dates. I even like this other guy on YouTube. His name's Vigorous Steve. I've had him on my podcast as well. He's really knowledgeable. There's another guy, Liao and Longevity, who doesn't take anything at all, but he's got a lot of experience on it and has written a lot of research papers. So I go and collect all my data from multiple sources. But the thing that I'm concerned with is I do my labs every 3 months. I got a really good doctor. I was actually talking to him a couple of weeks ago, so I haven't really talked about this publicly yet, but I'm going to be 50. So I'm thinking I'm going to do a bodybuilding show for my 50th. And
Wow.
yeah, I'm going to see if I can knock that out of the park. But we're going to be watching labs. We're going to be watching organ health. We're going to be watching everything. And I don't need that much. I mean, like, you don't need that much testosterone
Yeah,
to
you're
put
right.
on good muscle.
Yeah, that's true.
If you've got good diet, if you've got good exercise, and your sleep's on par. And I know that I got all of those areas on par. So it's just going to be like, all right, can my old ass body put up with the stress and the diet change that I'm going to have to put it through to get on stage and look that way? But that's just one of the things I've always wanted to do, man. Like,
Okay.
as guys, you got to push yourself. It's like, what's the point in being here if you're not testing
Yeah.
yourself constantly, right? Like, I've done boxing now for a few years. I love it. I'm not going to stop it. Like, I'm going to keep going to the dojo and training and doing sparring, but I kind of want to mix it up a little bit.
Can you see all the incels, the MGTOW guys are like, now you're Chad. Look, Rich Cooper, he's now a Chad. Look at him up there doing the bodybuilding show. Look at him with his six-pack abs. That's what's going to happen next. I can already see it.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's
Let him
pretty
say
funny.
whatever. The haters are always going to hate. Let them.
Yeah. Your supplement line. Can we talk about that? You talk about
Absolutely,
that.
man.
Yeah. Talk about
Yeah.
that. By the way, pre-workout, I try to like switch them up because I
Yeah.
love pre-workout. I'm a little too addicted to pre-workout. I love that shit. I listen to dubstep, go in there, and I just go crazy. And I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Can you talk about your supplement line?
Yeah. So I've got a great supplement line. You can find it at the unpluggedalpha.com under the supplement tab. They're broken down into categories. So I've worked very, very closely with what I believe is probably the best supplement producer in North America. None of their shit comes from China. It's all highly bioavailable. We put them into categories for testosterone production. So there's a T supplement. And in that category, you definitely want to take zinc, a DK combo, which is vitamin D, K, vitamin K as well, because you need both of those in the right dosages. What was the other one in that group? I think we've added Anato GG in there as well. There's estrogen metabolism, because for the most part, I don't know if you've read Estro-generation by Dr. Anthony J. Mike.
I've not.
It's a great book. You should check it out. I've also got a podcast on my channel
Is
with
this
him.
is this about why testosterone levels have been dropping in men?
That's part of it, but I mean,
Okay.
the subtitle of the book is why you're fat, sick, and nearly dead, basically.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of the North American population, because of environmental factors, compounds that mimic estrogen in the body, most guys are estrogen dominant. That's why you see a lot of guys, they're muffin top, they got the fat belly, they got the man boobs. It's because they're estrogen dominant. So one of the things that you got to do, I mean, like, read the book to get all the details, or just go watch the podcast on my channel with Dr. Anthony J. So just look on my channel for Dr. Anthony J, Estro-generation, and you should see it. It's a 90-minuter. But you want to remove compounds from your system that are going to act like estrogen in your body. And one of the things you can do is you can take supplements that get them out of your body. So I have a category for estrogen metabolism. Categories for performance, for fat burn, all that stuff. It's all there, but it's a great supplement line. I use it personally every day. I don't know. Make sense?
Beautiful. Yes, man. I will definitely check that out. Also, let's talk about this. The forward for your book, the forward for your book, The Unplugged Alpha, was written by the author of The Rational
Rollo.
Male, Rollo Tomassi. Can you talk about how that book initially affected you? I remember how much it affected me. And then, how you and Rollo have been friends since then. Can you talk about the influence that he's had?
Yeah, I think Rollo's first two books are probably right up there for me, along with David Buss's Evolution of Desire and Why Women Have Sex. I think those top four books. The first two for sure were like the catalyst. Yeah, I mean, I've known Rollo for quite a few years. We don't talk so much anymore, but when I was highly involved in the Mano Swamp and a lot of things that were going on in there, he's got a lot of good ideas.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Well, Rollo had a question for you. He goes, I'm curious to know if he's still planning on leaving Canada. A year ago, he's really intent on leaving, but I was wondering if something changed your mind.
Well, I mean, he knows this. I mean, I've got a kid here that I'm raising, so I'm
Uh,
not going anywhere anytime soon. But I
yeah.
mean, the plan is to make an exit, or at least a partial exit for sure, minimum, where I don't spend winters here because I'm really not a big fan of winters, and I like to ski, and there's not even big hills here to ski on. So what's the
Yeah.
point? But yeah, I will be spending a lot more time outside of Canada. Multiple passports. I'm gonna figure it out, but I'm not gonna give it away until I've made all the moves.
Beautiful. Here's a concept I didn't really hear you talk. You talked a little bit about it in the book, but this is like kind of a key concept for me, and is the concept of pre-selection, or what Dr. David Buss calls the mate copying strategy. The idea of so for me, like I said before, I host a bunch of bikini competitions and I host a bunch of pageants here and all the celebrity charity events in Los Angeles and Las Vegas. I'm usually the MC for those things, and from doing that, there's nothing like particularly special about me. I mean, I do kind of have my life put together, but I've just noticed there's just this exponential attention I get from women when I'm around other women, and then I have a bunch of
100%.
friends who are playmates, and whenever I'm with them and I go up and talk to a woman, I actually the nervousness look that you see on men's face whenever they go talk to a beautiful woman, that's what the women look like when I walk up with like Kindly Myers and CJ Sparks. And I was just curious, like, can you talk about? I feel like this is one of the most provable and one of the most underutilized functions when it comes to male attraction.
Yeah, there's a reason why women would rather date a married guy than a guy
Yeah,
living in his mom's
yeah,
basement, right? Because the whole pre-selection part of it. Um, Let me sort of sum it up this way. So one of the guys that I was working with at one point, he was really struggling with his self-image, He didn't have a very high opinion of himself. When he was younger, he was kind of fat. He didn't get a lot of attention from women. And in his late 20s, he kind of figured it out and looked good. And I was helping him out with his online dating, at one point, and he had this photograph. And he was in a nice, like, fitted shirt, like suit, everything like that, upright. He was a tall guy in the group, kind of in the middle, and he was at I don't know, a crap table or something, but he was throwing dice, and he had a drink in one hand and he was throwing dice. And there was two women to one side, a woman to this other side, and another dude just outside of that. And two out of the three women were looking at him with admiration, like, they had the F me look in their face,
yeah,
sort of thing. And then the dude was looking at him like he wanted to be him. And the other girl was just like laughing and smiling like she was having a great time. I'm like, this is the best picture ever. You can't even manufacture this in a studio with models and actors. And here you are with this. Why aren't you using this in your dating profile? Right. He used it and he, of course, got those results. So that whole pre selection thing, it's like, women want to be with guys that women have already selected,
yeah,
and they also want guys that men admire. You ask anybody that does public speaking, and if they bring their wife or their girlfriend along and they stand up on a stage and they deliver their speech, 45 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever happens to be, and they get down off the stage, these wives, girlfriends, whoever they happen to be, they throw themselves at their guy because they've now just talked to a large room of a whole bunch of people who've now stand up, given standing ovation. They
yeah.
get the big welcome, the handshake, the spotlights on them. They love that shit, right? So, it's no secret for those that see the code in the matrix once they understand it. But being influential and having pre-selection is important if you want to do well in life, and that's not just with women, but if you want to do well in
Yeah.
life in general.
Yeah, you're showing competency and you're showing that you're a leader of men. There's also these really cool studies from UNLV. I wonder if you've ever seen them when they show when men are gambling next to attractive women, that they have
Mm.
higher testosterone levels and they're willing to take greater risk. Also, when men drive sports cars, their testosterone levels go up. Have you ever seen
Yeah.
these studies?
Yeah. Did you ever see that Porsche study where they put guys in like a Porsche Turbo, and I think they put them in like a Camry or something like that, and they tested their serum testosterone levels after the Porsche,
Yeah.
and their levels were much higher?
It's crazy, man. It really is. When you think about like, how can you deny evolutionary pressure when you see things like that? That is clearly not my testicles are not a function of culture. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're
No,
producing this
it's
because of evolutionary pressures. It's just an amazing thing. So here's
that's
kind of the
reality.
controversy. This is like the back and forth that Rollo and I have. In order for
Yeah.
me to host an event with 200 girls, I have to have female friends help me out. Like 4 girls through my birthday party, and I know there's this kind of like hard and fast rule in the manosphere. This idea that you can't have female friends, and for 99% of men, I agree that you can't have female friends because most of you guys would get friend zoned. The idea of if you were like, let's just say you managed a strip club, or you're in a situation where you're like a male nurse and there's 40 other female nurses on the floor or something like that. If a man has that level of abundance, can he have female friends that, again, the reason why I keep bringing this up is like a lot of times for me, it's my female friends are doing the introduction for me. And whenever I talk to girls that are fantastically beautiful, like playmates or whatever, they're always telling me it's their girlfriend who introduced them to the guy that they're dating. Do you understand? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So yeah, to that point, I'm of the opinion that men and women can't be friends, because generally speaking, the reason why men try to become friends with women is because they want to get in their pants.
Sure.
Now, in the scenario that you're talking about, it's a little bit different, right? Like you need, like they're more accessories than what they are friends. Like you're not gonna be like, hey Becky, let's go on this rally and drive supercars,
Right.
3,000 miles and have a blast and drink booze and drive fast. Becky's not down for that, but Becky is down for being with Mike when he's at the event and there's lots of lights and cameras and
For sure.
photographers and there's other girls there. So yeah, like having those accessories there can be helpful, but it's situational, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. I think for the most part, if most guys that were in my life, what they would do is they would get friend zoned by all of these girls, and I just don't put that out there. Like I have a friend of
Right.
mine, again, she's a playmate with 3 million followers. She's been married for a while, and whenever I go to a bar with her, back when I, back in the day, we'd go out somewhere, and she would introduce me to someone, and it was over, Rich. It was fucking over. There was nothing else I had to do, and
Yeah.
because it was just
It's
such
easy. It's
brutal,
game on easy mode.
brutal pre-selection. Yeah, for sure. I mean that was the case, and so that I found that to be the case. But yeah, you're right. In a lot of cases, like they don't want to go play tackle football with me. They don't want to, hey, let's go to jujitsu class already. So I
Yeah.
totally understand what you're saying. I think we agree is number one, don't get put in the friend zone, and number two, Justin Waller talks about your girl should not be going on trips to Vegas by themselves. Let me tell you, as the guy in Vegas, Justin Waller is correct. That is a true statement, and I agree with that completely because I've
Yeah, I've
seen,
said that for a while too. It's,
dude.
you don't let them go out for girls' nights. You don't let them go out for, girls' weekends. There's no traveling to Mexico, Dominican, Europe. And it's like, look, girlfriends with boyfriends don't do that. And the problem is that a lot of women, they don't like that. And they'll be like, oh, you're too controlling. It's like, no, I'm not controlling. I just happen to care about you, and I'm not going to put you in a difficult situation. It's like, I'm not going to go and park my McLaren in a shitty neighborhood.
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to expose it to risk. I'm going to park it inside my garage and lock it there.
Yeah, it's so funny because it's for me. It's different. It's like I'm here. Dude, there are guys here who are monsters.
Trust me, I've
Rich,
been to Vegas
yeah,
many, many
yeah.
times. I know what goes on in
Rich,
Vegas.
no, I mean there are guys here who are so good with women, bro. It is, oh my god. And then some of them are like the male stripper slash VIP host, bro. You, and his name is Chad too, bro. It is crazy. And so when I see that, I'm like, yeah, I kind of understand. It's not a function of like you leaving me. It's like, why do you need to do this without me? There's a couple that I know here. She does OnlyFans stuff, and her husband, he does some other type of like real estate stuff, and they're always together 24/7, always, always, always together. And they bring women home together because she's bisexual, and their relationship works really, really well. But one of the things that happens is she's friends with Dan Bilzerian too, and she goes, just to let you know, I'm not coming unless my husband can come. And her frame is so strong when she says that he's one of the only guys that Dan lets come to the party. It's really interesting to watch, but they're always together. Meanwhile, if I go out in front of Dre's, Dre's after hours, and they're like, okay, a couple of girls can come in. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen couples where the girls go in and just leave the dude outside beyond the ropes. I've seen it happen hundreds of
Vast majority of guys,
this puppy
they're
dog
simps,
look
right?
on their face, and then meanwhile, like I'm going inside and like it's like 7-to-1 girls to guys, and I'm like, oh yeah, I get this. You're right. This is kind of like fishing with dynamite at this point. So yeah,
It's, you got to be territorial with your chick. I mean,
for sure.
if she has a problem with that, then let her find some other guy.
Yeah, Dr. Buss talks a bit about jealousy being an evolutionary adaptation. It's not a function of being immature. It's just one of these things where I'm a caveman, and the only way I know that the child is mine is if I'm the only one in the cave with her.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
yep, definitely.
You want to run around? Go be single. See you later.
Right, exactly. Here we go. Let's talk about this. The idea, a couple of things. The feminine primary social order, family law, those things are really interesting concepts where you talk about having a divorce attorney or somebody from family law talk to a man before he gets married and show him some of the realities that happen in these situations.
Yeah, so I've always recommended that guys would want to talk to a family lawyer before they get married. You could either go and sit in a family courtroom and see what happens to guys when they go through the divorce machine, or buy an hour of a lawyer's time where you're planning on getting married and at least get some information about what it is that you're walking into, so that at least you can walk into it with your eyes wide open. Because most guys walk into it with, "I'll just take the vows, everything will be fine, till death do us part, and nothing's going to go sideways." When the vast majority of marriages end in divorce after about 7 years, 50% of the time, it's higher, like 70 or 80% for second time round. And one of the saddest stats is, because most people end up in these long-term relationships, something like 13%. I got the stat in my book somewhere. It's about 13% of people after about 7.5 years or so are actually still in a state of love. And less than 3% are actually in a state of bliss. So it's not as easy as you think it is, just because culture or religion or your family or whatever it happens to be might be pushing you into it. That's why I tell guys, at least if you're going to do it, walk into it with your eyes wide open. Read my book, because I've got a full chapter on why smart men don't marry today.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't even get to the idea of like the suicides that are happening about men over the age of 50.
There's lots to unpack with that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the suicide rate is something like 8 to 10 times higher for men going through the divorce machine than what it is for women. Like, it's not women that are offing themselves. It's, generally speaking, guys.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Rich, I can't thank you enough. One of the greatest things about me doing this podcast is getting to interview some of my favorite authors. So it's really
Cool.
great to finally get to meet you and just all the different places that we've gone. If you guys like Rich's stuff, I highly recommend you guys check out Entrepreneurs in Cars, and definitely check out his book. I give it to a lot of women to read too. And it's funny. It's one of the things before, you remember we talked about the girls were agreeing in Las Vegas, because these women are very much realistic and they're constantly seeing how men's behavior is when they're at the Rhino or they're working at a cocktail job. You find that a lot of them are very politically conservative, and they tend to agree with a lot of the ideas that you have here, because they live in the real world. They got to work for money. You know what I'm saying? So I do really appreciate that. I really appreciate you coming on. Guys, Rich, where can we find you on Instagram?
The Unplugged Alpha. There's underscores between the and unplugged. Best place to find everything from me, though, is at my website. Just go to richcooper.ca. You'll find links to my book, my supplement line, booking me for coaching, my YouTube. It's all there.
All right, Rich. Hey, listen, if you're ever in Vegas and you need anything, please let me know. Hopefully we can bump into each other again, and I will talk to you. The rest of you guys, I will see you all next week.
I'll take you up on that, brother.
Thank you.